All right, you are live and unmuted.
Okay, Mark, when you have gotten the rest of the committee in, we'll begin.
Okay. Would Susan Gammie please raise your digital hand? All right.
Eugene, I may pass the um, public testimony to you uh, sooner than was planned,
Okay,
but just take note of, and it will basically be, I will have called a certain number of them, and any that are left over who have signed up. So if you can keep a tally of who I call, then it's others. I'm going to ask them to turn their camera off after they speak, but that may be an imperfect way of doing it,
okay, all right.
but they'll all be evident.
There's Susan. Yay.
Finally.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Hiller, thank you for joining us. I put you in because I know you're going to speak later, but if you wouldn't mind turning off your camera until you're called, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Mark, we may begin.
Uh, so unless the only person we seem to be missing is Bo, and I'm not sure if he's joining or not.
Okay. Well, we have a quorum, so we'll start.
Yes, sir.
This is Community Board 2 Manhattan, the Landmarks and Public Aesthetics Committee. It's our second meeting for this month. I would note at the beginning, we're obviously only through Zoom, and note that if you plan to attend tomorrow night's meeting, it will likewise be in this same manner on Zoom. And we would expect that meetings following will be in the regular way. The principal application being heard this evening is an unusual situation with respect to the landmarks. We consider the new building, and the unique situation is that immediately adjacent to it is an individual landmark, both exterior and interior, and the committee and the board have responsibility, of course, for all of the landmark buildings in the district, and in particular, this one as an individual landmark. This will be very much at the center of our discussion, and that will be evident as we move along. The recommendations to the Landmarks Committee will therefore be concerned with the appropriateness of the proposed building and equally to ensure the integrity of the merchant's house. There's great public interest in this application. There's something over 200 people here as members of the community and the city to attend the meeting. The testimony will be given after the presentation of both the application and a presentation by the House. The order of the meeting will be somewhat different. The application followed by the presentation of the Merchant's House. A guest will speak, and then the public members who have signed up to speak. And if time permits, we will then open the questioning to those who are on as attendees but have not signed up to speak. I suspect that if things go smoothly, we'll have some time for that group. Following the questions time, the public meeting will end and the committee will convene in a business session to form the resolution. Everyone is invited to stay for the business session and only members of the committee may participate. It's important to remember that this is a Landmarks Committee meeting for considering the appropriateness of the building and the attendant questions concerning the Merchant's House. At its simplest, this means that the new building's appearance must be in harmony with the historic district and the immediate neighborhood within the district. In this entrance, the Merchant's House will be an important consideration. There's one small application to be heard before the East 4th Street building, and we will have that now. The application is for 52 Gansevoort Street and is to install a painted wall sign. Jackie, are you the only one to present for this?
Hi, I'm joined by the architect tonight. Her name is Ana Maria Torres.
Ana Maria Torres is in the meeting as a panelist.
Hello,
Great.
Okay.
good afternoon, good evening.
Okay, thank you. Begin.
All right, may I share my screen?
Please.
Okay, can everyone see a building that says 52-58 Gansevoort Street?
Yes, we're fine.
Great, thank you. Thank you, committee members, for hearing this application tonight. My name is Jackie Puduvallen, JPD Preservation Consulting. I'm here tonight with Ana Maria Torres of AT Architects. This application is for 52 to 58 Gansevoort Street. It's a spread address, so we're really looking at 58 Gansevoort. But this is on the south side of Gansevoort between 9th Avenue and Washington. And the application is simply for a painted wall sign at the top of the parapet that's on above the first floor of this building. So you can see location in the historic district map here on the left, existing condition photo in the middle, and on the right is the proposed signage, which would be a dark green painted sign. So here are just some photos to show you the streetscape for this south side of Gansevoort Street. I know I don't have to do a lot of explaining of this streetscape to this particular committee, but I will ask you to note that, especially to the buildings, these other low-scale buildings to the east also have signage on their parapets. One of them is also a painted sign. That's the Audemars Piguet sign that we see here, and I'll show that in more detail later. There it is. So close up of just our small grouping of buildings. The other signs that are currently present on parapets at the end of the block toward 9th Avenue. And just showing you the history on this building is there was historically painted signage at this parapet previously. You can see it here in these photos from 1938 and the 1940s tax photo. Of course, this district, having been an industrial district previously, and we all know its character is changing in the last 20 or so years, But this district always had a history of large painted signs on its commercial properties. So in the photo on the right, I'm sorry, on the left, you're looking west from Gansevoort Street and 9th Avenue. You're looking at Gansevoort Street to the left and Little West 12th Street to the right, where you can see a large painted wall sign at 22 Little West 12th on its east facade. Pretty much the same view on the other photo. More painted wall signs and applied signage in various ways, say on spandrel panels between floors on taller buildings. These photos are also from 1938. You're looking at West 14th Street on the left, and on the right is a large painted wall sign that had been on 13th Street at Washington Street. And some more painted wall signs showing signage at parapets of buildings. This is from 1929. Looking at the east side of Washington Street from Little West 12th Street. And of course, in the recent decades, the Landmarks Commission has been approving painted wall sign master plans within this district, as well as other formerly commercial districts. And here's just a sampling of those painted wall sign master plans that have been approved. And here's just the existing elevation and proposed elevation showing the proposed very modest sign saying Bottega Veneta, who is now the commercial tenant for this particular building. The sign itself would be 18 inches tall and again painted a dark green. And you see that in the detail elevation here and in the rendering. And that is the presentation, and we look forward to any questions or comments.
And you're representing that this conforms to whatever regulations are applicable
Yes.
building in the district. Thank you. From the committee, any questions?
Well, I would start.
Just speak up. I don't think we need to bother with hands.
All right, let me, well, my volume is up. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
The question is on the condition of the brick, and it looks like it's been whitewashed in the past, and so it's that irregular patina. And I wonder, after this tenant leaves and another one comes in, how does that change get affected? And so what is the long-term effect of allowing this particular sign to be painted on the brick?
You're right. So this group of buildings was previously painted over many decades ago, and you can see that in the historic photos. That paint is just being left to wash off the brick over time. That and the removal of this Bottega Veneta sign is something we have already been in discussion with the landlord about. They're already being proactive and considering what would this require and what would this look like taking the sign off eventually. So we have a specification for paint removal that would be very gentle, and it would be discreetly placed just to remove the sign and not not adhere too much to the brick to take off a lot of paint in a sort of uniform way, but to take it off very piecemeal and in a gentle fashion to not create like a blanket clean look to the parapet that would stand out against the rest of the facade.
And in addition to what Jackie just has been mentioned, also the painted and they will be used, it will not be abrasive, it will be just a water base, and it will kind of also all over time the painting itself, what the idea of to create more the ghost, the tradition of the ghost paint brand names than they were in this from the 19th century on in this area.
Okay, I share Brian's concern, and Jackie, I just have a quick question for you. Does whatever methodology of gentle application and gentle removal of this Bottega Veneta sign, is this something that will be effective or successful? Are there other situations you can point at where there has been removal without undue harm to the underlying surface? Or is it kind of just like fingers crossed?
Well, it's a specification for paint removal that I've seen specified in other buildings. The one I can think of right now is at 55 Gansevoort, where some paint was removed there, but without taking off a ghost sign or
Mhm.
remnants of ghost sign.
Great.
So that's the only one I can think of right now.
Okay, but so you can point at another one where, so we know it's possible, in other words.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And in what we're being asked to approve is both the overall and this particular one as the first. And is there, are you asking that the commission staff approve any changes going forward?
Yeah. I have a question.
Well-
I heard, I'll let you answer, Jackie, to Chenault's question.
I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if that was a question for me. So I'm sorry, can you repeat
Go
that?
ahead, Anita.
Should I go ahead? What color is this sign, the letters actually?
It's a dark green.
Uh-huh, it is, okay. Well, personally, I like it very much. I think this is the kind of chic and still legible and kind of faded that I'm very fond of. So I think it's very nice, personally.
Right. I just want to be clear about the going forward as an application for a master plan. Future changes would be approved by staff, right?
Well, this is not a master plan. This is just
Oh, it's
asking.
not a master plan. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Correct.
No.
Yeah, sorry if that was confusing because
Right.
I was talking about, the master plan applications usually see in this district for painted signage. This
Oh,
is just one discrete
I
sign for this
understand.
one tenant.
So it's this sign, and if it's changed, it would come back.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Basically.
Thank you. We can go forward with the next application if the committee are satisfied. The application is 27 East 4th Street to demolish an existing building and to construct a new building.
Okay.
When you're ready, and are all of your people on that?
I'm not sure. I see some names. Yes.
I'm
I
here,
think-
Jackie.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like Lester is beginning to share his screen.
Yep.
Okay. So, thank you again, committee members, for hearing this application tonight. My name is Jackie Puduvallin again for your records. I'm here tonight with Jordan Rogov of DXA Studio Architects, as well as Lester Katz of DXA Studio, and Carl Rubenacher, I'm sorry, Carl, of GMS. Carl is a structural engineer who will be able to address any issues related to the minimizing of any impact of construction on neighboring buildings. And see, can we advance, please, to, yes, keep going. One more. Okay, thank you. Let's stay here for a second. So what we're showing you tonight, as I'm sure everybody knows, is a proposal to demolish an existing garage structure and to build a new 9-story building. This 9-story building would be as of right under current zoning. Next slide, please. Now, I'm sure I don't really need to introduce the site to everyone here, but I'm going to anyway. This site is located on the north side of East 4th Street, mid-block between Bowery and Lafayette Street. To its east is the Merchant's House Museum, a late federal, early Greek revival style house and individual landmark. And to its west is a 9-story loft building. At the rear of the site is a historic alleyway that's not a public way, but it is accessed by an alley from Bowery through a gate, and that will become more relevant as we go into the presentation. But I think you can see a bit of it here on the Zola map in the middle. Thank you. So there's that access alleyway from Bowery and the courtyard that is behind the site. Let's see. So, and I should also, actually, let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is the third proposal for a new building on this this lot that that you and the Landmarks Preservation Commission have been asked to review over, say, the last 15 or so years. Previously in 2014 and in 2023, the Landmarks Commission voted to approve a new building on this site, to demolish the existing garage structure and to build a new building. Up until the 1940s, here on this site, there was a townhouse. The garage that is there is constructed in 1945. It extends to the rear of its lot line pretty much. The garage is an unadorned structure. It's not one structure for which the district was designated. And it was, as I said, it was the commission's decision in 2014 and 2023 to allow its replacement with a new building. Next slide, please. Okay, here's this a wider shot for more context. So again, you see our garage structure that we're looking to replace. See the tall loft building next to it, as well as the highly decorated commercial building that faces onto, takes the corner with Lafayette, and of course the Merchants House Museum and the park that's now currently next to the other side of the Merchants House Museum. Next slide. Here are some views to show you the streetscape and show you the site a little more clearly. So we're showing you looking east and west on West 4th Street. We're showing you the rear of the lot and that top right corner photograph. That's the extent, that's the back of the existing garage building. And you can see a bit of the courtyard that's currently behind it. And at the bottom left corner, you see that alleyway that leads out onto Bowery. Next slide, please. So now here are the two previous proposals that were shown to the Landmarks Commission and approved by the Landmarks Commission. The proposal from 2018 was, under its previous zoning, it needed a variance from City Planning Commission, which subsequently had to be approved by the City Council. That height was subsequently not approved by the City Council, even though it was approved by LPC and by the Planning Commission. So that building was not, did not make progress. No action was taken there by ownership. The owner came back with another proposal for an as-of-right building in 2021, and that's what you're looking at on the right. That design did receive a status update letter from the Landmarks Commission. So the Landmarks Commission did vote to approve this building, but that also was not a design that the owner decided to move forward on. Next slide, please. Now, as a consequence of that, that hearing process from 2021, the Landmarks Commission did work into its status update letter certain conditions for the approval, ultimate approval of drawings for building that building. Some progress was made on those stipulations and others not, simply because the owner decided not to move forward with that design. But there have been test pits done, and what we're listing here is all of the things that were previously mandated by the commission and written into the previous status update letter. And we anticipate that they will ask for the same things again. And this team is already working on, that anticipated request. So nothing here is unanticipated. Everything is already being worked on. That includes looking at, monitoring any vibration at the building next door, surveying plaster conditions within the Merchants House Museum, which I'm sure everyone here is concerned about, a stabilization plan, making weekly process reports, and of course, monitoring foundation work. Next slide, please. So here you see the streetscape and how the massing of this proposed building would fit into that streetscape. So we're showing you the north side of the street going from Broadway to Lafayette to Bowery, and showing you that within this context, we believe the proposed 9-story height of this new design would still be contextual with the surrounding buildings. You have a 106-foot building next door. This proposed design would be 103 feet. You have a slightly taller building also at the corner with Lafayette. And you can see photos of each of these buildings that are shown in these massing studies so that you can also remind yourself of the variations in architectural styles you find on this street. Next slide, please. And here we're looking at the south side of East 4th Street, again, looking from Bowery to Lafayette to Broadway. Again, this building would be very similar in height to a building directly across the street. We're showing you that by superimposing an outline of the proposed building next to this building that's about 101 feet across the street. Next slide, please. Here are historic maps that show us how this particular block has evolved over time. I don't need to tell you guys this, but like most parts of this part of Manhattan, everything here was originally row houses with some type of, very often some type of back house or stable structure at the rear of the lot. Gradually over time, by the late 19th century, most of these freestanding houses were replaced with loft buildings that or other types of commercial or institutional use structures that would extend pretty much to their rear lot line. So the character of this part of Manhattan, this district, went from very residential to very commercial and light industrial in a very short amount of time in the late 19th century. And that's what you can see in these maps. And you can also see that by the 1955 Bromley map on the right, we're seeing the garage structure that is presently there. Next slide. Here's some historic photos to remind us what had been the building that was originally on this lot. And you're seeing from left to right, 1923, the 1940s tax photo, and the 1980s tax photo showing the current garage. I want to point out something that the designation report says about this period of development in the district. The majority of loft construction in the NoHo Historic District Extension occurred between 1890 to 1900, with 19 of the area's 25 store and loft buildings completed within a 10-year period. And you certainly see that in these historic photos with the existing loft buildings that are to the west of this lot. Next slide. Here are some more examples of these tall loft buildings that became characteristic of NoHo, and which we believe our proposed building will be suitable in context with. As the designation report states, by the latter part of the 19th century, the NoHo Historic District Extension was becoming a full-fledged commercial and manufacturing center. 25 store and loft buildings were constructed in the district extension between 1868 to 70 and by 1912. And what you're seeing here again is not only a marked increase in height of the buildings, but also an exuberance in how their facades were expressed with different architectural details, different styles, introduction of arches for window openings, not just your usual straight-headed punched openings. Next slide. Something else that's characteristic of this district is what I think of as sort of a sawtooth effect, where you have what remains of the low-scale residential buildings intermingled with the later loft construction buildings. The designation report addresses this as, quote, "These lofts, which were designed by many of the leading architects of the day in a variety of then fashionable revival styles, towered over the residential buildings with which they intermingled. At 5 to 8 stories in height and 1 to 3 lots in width, their arrival profoundly changed the scale of the neighborhood and heralded the appearance of the modern-day NoHo Historic District Extension." So to me, that reiterates that the designation report itself is acknowledging that part of the usual streetscape of this district is to see this large difference in heights, just as you go building to building in the streetscape. Next slide, please. And here we're just highlighting a few of the new buildings approved within this district that maintain that typical loft construction, traviated facade, using somewhat more modern materials, but in a rhythm and a language that is consistent with the loft construction of the late 19th century, early 20th century. You can see the addresses here on the bottom. I won't bore you with that. But let's go to the next slide. And with that, I would like to introduce Jordan Rogov of DXA to take you through the design. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie, and good evening, everyone. And thank you to the committee members and all in attendance here for giving us this opportunity to present. I think that starting the story of the design inspiration, it really began with an investigation of this collection of about 56 buildings that compose the extension to the district. In those, among that 56 buildings or so, there's almost an equal number of different architectural styles. And as Jackie alluded to, there's an exuberance and playfulness about many of the expressions that you see throughout the district. So we're immediately struck by the density of experimentation and architectural expression within just a 2-block radius. The district itself has a fascinating history, as Jackie touched upon, that it's only a kind of continuum across the years has been a consistent and constant reinvention and adaptation. And that in itself is quite interesting, starting with the residential, moving to kind of smaller scale commercial and manufacturing, and then this period from the 1890s to the 1900s where the scale dramatically shifted up with the store and loft buildings. And then the mass exodus that happened following World War II, where many of those manufacturers kind of left the buildings vacant. And that opened the door to another just absolutely fascinating chapter in the district's history that we look to for inspiration. And that was a period from about 1950 to 1980, in which some of the most revered and incredible artists were all practicing kind of next to one another and within this 2-block radius. And on this slide, I can give you a sense of just within the 2 blocks, some of the names that were present there: Chuck Close and Robert Mapplethorpe, Cy Twomley, Basquiat, among several others. So
Jordan,
yeah.
hi, everyone. Sorry to interrupt. Valerie De La Rosa, CB2 chair. We're just going to pause just for a moment. We do have an elected official on,
Sure.
Council Member Harvey Epstein, who has very limited time this evening. So he has some remarks he's going to make. So we have a tiny break in this presentation. So
Sure.
Council Member Epstein.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. I'm sorry to interrupt. I appreciate you talking about the history of our neighborhood and concerns. I just wanted to flag this issue. I know the board's going to be discussing this tonight. But myself and the elected officials or state elected officials wrote a letter about this issue, so you all aware. We are really concerned about this project, this commercial building being built right next to the Merchant House. This is, obviously such a rich history and, finding of the Underground Railroad. I think we have real reservations about this project, so I wanted to flag that. We've already put this in writing, and I am happy to continue to talk to the board going forward about this potential project. But just so you know that all your elected officials in the neighborhood are united in feeling like this project shouldn't go forward at this point, and that we encourage the Parks Department to acquire the property to save this Merchant House for long term. I just wanted to flag that for people, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Should I resume? Good.
Yeah, let's thank the council member first. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
I like that. I feel like it's everywhere.
Thank you. Continue now.
Okay, thank you. Yes. All right. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so just a brief kind of survey of these artists. Again, the buildings within the district left vacant by the exodus of manufacturers provided fertile ground and really just an ideal situation with their open floor plans, high ceilings, and kind of plentiful fenestration and natural light. Again, here's a sampling of the incredible talents that were amassed. And I think what jumped out at us is the parallels in the diversity. And if you go to the next slide, the diversity of expression and painting in visual arts that emerged from such a small area, that there was that distinct parallel with the incredible richness of the texture of the different architectures that were practiced within that 2-block area as well. So we thought that that's really kind of part of the story, that not only is it this beautiful area of architecture, a collection of architecture, but it's a beautiful collection of artists and expression that's happening inside their walls. Next slide. So just to kind of highlight very briefly some of the more exuberant, again, to quote Jackie earlier, moments throughout, I think some of the most beautiful, expressive spandrels can be found in this area. So, and starting on the left, the sculptural elements that are kind of in tandem structural elements, in particular at 20 Bond with the beautiful kind of twisting column expressions across the facade. And again, spandrels on the right, if you go to the next slide. Here, I think the peak of exuberance are probably these amazing cornices. I mean, they're almost over the top, but they're so playful, and really the cadence and differentiation between those elements, I think, is a defining characteristic of the district. And then there's this great kind of dichotomy or juxtaposition of very organic expressions along with the more kind of rigid articulated masonry and projected in coinage, and just about every trick that you can pull off with a brick is executed across again one of this kind of very small collection of buildings. Next slide. Our design really tried to kind of synthesize some of these considerations, where the goal was to embrace this transformative nature, knowing that this neighborhood's never been put in amber. It's constantly evolving and adapting to the kind of cultural moment, the needs of society and the neighborhood at that time, and trying to at the same time celebrate this rich history and inventory of architecture. And again, the incredible artwork that was produced here. So you see right away the idea of kind of distilling that idea of a twisting column and capturing some of the illusionistic qualities of some of those artists, as well as these kind of expressive artwork that became the inspiration for the more ornamental aspects of the spandrels that we're proposing. So if you go to the next slide. So here, just to speak very briefly, that probably most critical element is analyzing all of the buildings there and understanding the geometry and composition of the of the other store and loft buildings. And then one of the most kind of abundant approaches has been a tripartite, both horizontally and vertically. So we have a kind of a 3-bay composition, and then a classical construction with a multi-story base, a body of the building, and then a kind of a single-story cap with a cornice. Again, distilled, a more contemporary version, but all trying to kind of derive inspiration from the neighborhood itself. Next slide. Oh, actually, can you go back just for a second? I think one important thing, and I think Jackie touched upon it, is that The previous two proposals, both were approaching, I think, like variances and trying to put in additional FAR. But since that time, with kind of substantial zoning changes throughout the city, this is actually as of right construction, and we believe it furthers an appropriateness argument in following the datum of the neighboring buildings, in particular number 25, just to the west of us. And initially, the Merchant House itself was part of a row house and not kind of a standalone building. So it's kind of restoring that condition for better or worse for those that are present here tonight. So next slide. So starting with the base of the building, the use, the underlying district use allows for a commercial property. So in this instance, it's likely to be Class A office space from the 2nd to the 9th floor. And then the ground floor, while a tenant has not been definitively signed, the goal is that it's either an art gallery or a restaurant. That's in the works. Also interesting, and we'll get to in a little bit, is that there is an easement off of the rear of the building, which is part of what we're proposing. So we'll get to that shortly. But that will operate in tandem with the ground floor tenant. Next slide. So this oblique view here, you see the two entries. On the left is the entry to the office building, and to the right would be that ground floor commercial. And then there's a secondary entry or egress on the rear of the building. Next slide, please. So, okay, one of the things, as I'm sure the committee understands or knows, is that part of what we're going to present to the Landmarks Preservation Commission is also signage and lighting, and so we'll get into the details a little later. But the idea here is that the code required lighting is integrated into the spandrels, so it's not visible, but it's illuminating the ground plane in front of the doors. And then we're also proposing a light, kind of architectural lighting, kind of a soft light that washes and again kind of amplifies the illusionistic quality of the twist of the columns. Next slide. So for the body of the building on the right here is kind of zooming in and seeing the spandrel expression. Again, we took our inspiration from a lot of the artwork that we reviewed from the artists within the district. And we're actually kind of emulating the historic approach whether it was cast in terracotta or a masonry approach. This is essentially a 3D printed mold that we're able to kind of pour the cementitious paneling. And then we actually polish that so that the aggregate's exposed a la terrazzo. So that's the kind of general appearance of the primary facade. Next slide, please. Enjoying the comments. The top of the building, the cornice, also takes into consideration some of that quality of the more exuberant spandrels and expressions that we see throughout the district. Again, in a more contemporary manner. Next slide, please. All right, so moving to the east elevation. The east elevation is switching to a secondary material, which is very common for the store and loft buildings throughout the district. Small punched openings along the lot line, very little relief. It's all kind of a coplanar expression. And the windows are expressed as double hung, although they are not operable being on a lot line. Next slide. So this is a image from the park looking at the Merchant's House. And in the background, you see the proposed elevation there, kind of a modest backdrop for the Merchant's House. On the right, there's some detailing where the band coursing is expressed. from the primary facade, and it returns as a soldier coursing along the side. Next slide, please. Okay, so for years, the area that is an easement has been kind of a parking lot and a garbage storage area behind the building. We intend to restore that to a Belgian block area where there used to be access to stables. And then there was a stable entry alley that extends out to Bowery. So we'll limit the Belgian block to the area directly behind the building. And again, that easement connects to the proposed ground floor tenant within the building. Next slide. So here we just have a bird's eye view of the area to receive the Belgian block renovation and restoration behind the building. Next slide. So this is an image looking back at the building. The ground floor extends the full depth of the property and abuts the court. And then floors 2 through 9 recede back about 32.5 feet. This facade keeps that secondary material wrapped around, with the exception of replicating the spandrels in the primary facade, thinking that this facade is kind of primary B to the primary A on East 4th Street. Next slide. And then this is the full elevation from the court. Next slide. A little bit of lag. There we go. All right, so this is just a survey of the materials being used. Again, a cementitious panel. It's likely to be GFRC. It might be UHPC. Depending on the multiple manufacturers that we're speaking with now, we hope to have that sorted out within the next week or two before we present to LPC. They look identical in nature, so it'll look exactly as what we've shown tonight, but they're fundamentally a little different in the way that they're produced. The base of the building will be a kind of a matching stone to the panels on the primary facade. All metal will be in this kind of charcoal gray color that you see in the middle. The selected brick for the secondary facades is a Belgian brick. And then we have cast sills and coping stone, along with the Belgian block pavers at the bottom. And then finally, at the top of the building, we have a mechanical and acoustical screen that envelops the elevator overrun and mechanical equipment that will sit up on top of the roof. Next slide. This is a little bit more detail on the lighting strategy that we already discussed. Next slide. And then just briefly to explain the construction technology, that this is a rain screen system. So it exceeds current energy code. And the building is kind of hyper insulated and has a membrane that wraps that essentially makes the building watertight. And then the cementitious cast panels essentially serve as a protection to that membrane. So they're mounted on the outside of that. And below are some plan details of some of the column works. And these are sectional details of the spandrels and columns. Next slide. And then getting into some of the cornice expression, how those are composed as cast elements and then hung from the rain screen system. Next slide. And then this is an image showing the visibility of the rooftop, the screen that I mentioned with those material samples that wraps around the mechanical system, which is a split system. So there are smaller condensers behind that, as well as the elevator overrun and stair emergency egress access. Next slide. I think that might be it for, yes. And with that, I would like to pass the baton to Carl, whose involvement in this project preceded our studios. He is like intimately involved with the structural considerations, and I think there's been lots of additional work that's been put into it in response to the concern expressed throughout this process and the previous two proposed designs. So I'll pass that on to you, Carl. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. My name is Carl Rubenacker. I'm with GMS. We're a structural engineering and building envelope firm located in Manhattan. Personally, I've been working on this project since, I think, 2013. This is the current iteration that we have. Starting with the structural design, the starting point is geometry, right? Understanding the adjacencies, understanding the lot line condition, the party walls. So the first step in this logical process was to have a survey of the site and the party walls, which this slide is depicting. You can see here the photo of the existing condition showing the merchant's house and the one-story existing building, the exposed party wall. That where it used to be on 2070 East 4th Street side, there used to be a 4-story building. And then the whole streetscape had, buildings next to each other, right? So now where we're filling in a lot that's been basically empty for quite a while, for the last 50 years. Next slide, please. So besides the survey, there's test pits to understand the below grade portion of the party wall, right? To understand where's the foundation. So test pits were done. There were test pits done back in 2012. There was another test pit done in 2022 with multiple parties present. And basically what those test pits confirmed is that the existing foundation is sitting on undisturbed sands from the glacial times down several feet, below the old basement on 27 East 4th Street side. Next slide, please. This is just a letter from the
Could you enlarge the actual drawing part a bit? Just as you speak of it.
I'm not sure how to do that.
Okay, then we'll carry on.
These are PowerPoint slides.
Just be with your cursor go exactly where you're talking about, and that would help.
Okay, so there was in terms of test pits, there were 2 test pits dug against the wall with the merchant's house. The first test pit is on the south side, on the picture of the south side, which is right there. There was a test pit dug, and you can see the cross section on the right. And then there's a second test pit that was done in 2022 that's shown in the middle of the page, and then the section on the right. And it's nothing surprising. There's the masonry wall, rubble foundation, and then the undisturbed sand below. Next slide, please. This is just the letter from the geotechnical engineer identifying the material that was found at the base of the pit, the geometry of the footings that were found that were uncovered during the pit. And then you can see on the right the picture of the actual pit that was dug to confirm the information. Next slide, please. Of course, there's also a geotechnical investigation with borings, like any other building in Manhattan, in New York. So there were a couple borings taken down to quite a depth, and the soil properties were confirmed through these borings. The next slide, please. This is a plan view. So this is a plan view. North is to the right. This is showing the site of 27 East 4th Street, and it's showing the new foundation, the proposed foundation, with a couple items highlighted. So the street is on the left. Merchant's house is the yellow highlighted portion towards the bottom, which is towards the east. You can see that the wall at the lot line and the party wall is green, highlighted in green. And then in blue, we have stepped our foundation so that we're coincident with the bottom of the footing of the merchant's house, so we don't have to underpin the merchant's house. On the west side, further up the page, there's a lot line wall that is on the west lot line, and then beyond that is 25 East 4th, highlighted in yellow.
And is the part in blue, it looks like it's not the entire merchant's house. I mean,
I think that's just a graphical thing. I think it would actually, the raised part extends another 10 feet out over to where the cursor is. I apologize for that.
okay, so the intention is that it's the house and a little beyond.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. And you'll see it in the next slide in the section. But yes, that'll extend the entire length and a bit more, the merchant's house building. So there's, if you look in blue, we've highlighted the entire foundation there, and we're going to use a matte foundation. It'll be stepped up to be coincident with the bottom of the footing at the party wall with the merchant's house. You can see the green party wall there highlighted where the cursor is, and then the merchant's house on the right. The merchant's house also has a cellar portion. You can kind of see it under the yellow part. So they've already kind of dug below. So we're just kind of replicating what had been done on the merchant's house side on our side. On the left of this picture, you can see the lot line wall in green, and then yellow further over is 25 East 4th Street. Next slide. So this, now in terms of constructing the, constructing the new building, we've thought of a sequence that tries to minimize the disturbances at any one time. So the sequence is to build the foundation from north to south, so basically on this picture from right to left, in pieces. So there's always only a small amount of excavation that happens. At the same time, the intent is to keep the existing roof in place so that the excavation is not exposed to the weather. It's interior. It's all happening inside the building that exists now, the existing one-story building. And then furthermore, while the excavation happens, just belt and suspenders, we have designed red steel braces that go across the site to make sure that everything is held in place. If we look at the section, that'll explain that a little bit better. That's where we're going to have the rakers, and then as the blue part has to get excavated, marching down the site from north to south, and then poured, excavated, poured in small bits. Next slide, please. So then the last part of the presentation here structurally is that to confirm that things are going well, there's a monitoring plan. The monitoring plan complies with the TPPN 10 of 88 for landmark structures, and we've gone a bit beyond that even. But basically, it's composed of several concepts. One is optical monitoring, like a survey monitoring of the wall of the merchant's house, and the other, I believe, the other structure on the other side to confirm that there's little to no movement, that there's a crack monitoring. If there's any exposed cracks, they get little crack monitors on them to also get checked during the process. There's vibration monitors down in the cellar that'll pick up any vibration that might be induced. And then a tilt meter up on the wall in green there to see if there's any movement, to confirm that there really isn't any movement. Okay, and then on the right-hand side, this little plan that shows all the in plan where the monitors would go, not just on the merchant's house, but on the other adjacent buildings, 25 East 4th, 16 Cooper Square, and then I think it's 403 Lafayette, something up on the upper left-hand side. So that's the monitoring plan. The next sheet, if you go to the next slide, this is just lays out in detail the specific measures that are going to be taken, the thresholds for the frequency of monitoring, type of monitoring, the frequency of monitoring, the thresholds where there's warnings, the thresholds where there's a stopping of work. It's all in there. So that's it. Thank you.
This goes above and beyond the requirements.
Absolutely. Yes.
Beyond the requirements for what?
The published requirements for landmark structures in TPPN 10 of 88, we're going a bit beyond them in this case.
Yeah, I believe that's all we have part of the presentation.
Yes, so that's, we have an appendix with additional details if anyone's curious, but that's the bulk of our presentation. We thank you all for listening, and we welcome your questions and comments.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. We're going to hear the all the testimony and then have the questions, unless the committee feel that it should be done now. What is your wish?
I just have
we'll go on, and so we're getting a full picture of things and can have questions back and forth based on what we hear from the Merchant's House and perhaps a bit from the public. So thank you.
Chenault, can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
I was curious if you have a section through a typical wall that faces the old Merchant's House. In other words, you have their brick wall, and then your wall is constructed out of steel and brick facade, or how are you separating them? Are they right up against each other? Do you have whatever it is? What are your provisions that you're not transmitting vibration to the old building?
I can take a shot at that. When you're building a new building next to an existing building, there are seismic considerations, and so every 50 feet vertically, you need to step away from the building. So I believe we have like a full inch, maybe an inch and a half between the two buildings, and that I don't know if it's appropriate for me to answer. There were a number of questions directed directly to me in the comments, or if I should pass on that, I defer to the committee. But part of the adjacency, I think, also is that the structure isn't going down directly. It is actually stepping in, as Carl said. It's a technique called benching, which eliminates any risk to the adjacent structure. Underpinning is necessary if you go straight down to a depth deeper than the adjacent building. So by stepping away, you don't require underpinning. Underpinning avails you to a little bit more risk than if you avoid going deeper right up against that building.
No, I understand. I think we're very familiar with that.
Okay.
I was just curious about the actual section that
not touching, very much not touching. Yeah,
we can go into more detail in the full.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
To the point of the questions that have been raised through the chat, it is not part of our record or part of our consideration for what's in the chat. We'll come to time for questions from the public, and they can be posed at that time through the regular way. So if you would please use the chat only if you can't hear or can't see or can't connect in some way. Thank you.
Chenault, to your earlier question, which was, should we go on to the other presentations and to the public session in advance of the committee questions? I think that's a great idea, because we will want to have as much information as possible and as many points of view as possible before we get into our committee session, the questions.
Okay, that's settled if the committee agree. That's what we had planned to going forward. Could you take your screen share down, please. And Mark, if you'll ensure that all the people who are to speak as presenters for the Merchant's House.
Thank you, Chenault. Michael Hiller and Pi Gardner are with us, and they'll tell me if there's anybody else I should promote. I have started to promote members of the public who have actually signed up to speak. I ask that you keep your cameras off so we don't have visual clutter until your name is called by the chair or the chairs. And with that, Chenault, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, fine.
Chenault, could you also please let people know what the time limit is so that they can be prepared for speaking?
It's 2 minutes for each speaker. Okay, Pi, you can begin, and Michael, and as you need to, you'll be able to share the screen. Thank you.
Greetings all. Now let me see if I can share my screen and not mess things up. I just have to find it. Hang on. Sorry about that. Is it? Here it is. Sorry, I can't seem to. Here it is. Can you see my screen?
We have it now.
Great. Okay, so I'm Pi Gardner, director of the Merchant's House Museum, and greetings. I'd want to first of all thank CB2 for your extended patience as we deal with yet another set of plans from the proposed building next door. It's building number 3 for those of you who may not have been keeping track of our 14 years working to protect the house from dramatic pause, guaranteed irreparable damage, and possible collapse of the Merchant's House. Thanks to all the MHM supporters in Zoomland. I know I am preaching to the converted, albeit for a few lost souls out there. Now let's move this along. And also thanks to Harvey Epstein and all the electeds who are supporting the Merchant's House and protecting and preserving it forever. How do I get my screen to say, go on, there we are. I chose this because of the weather and it's what snow should look like, beautiful and white. In starting off, I just want to get on my soapbox and remind you all of exactly what is at stake here and why the Merchant's House should be protected and preserved at all costs. Fair to say, the cultural and architectural significance of the Merchant's House, my dog agrees, in the history of the city of New York is undisputed and cannot be overstated. Let's see here. That's New York One's Cheryl Wills, who came to the house yesterday and broke the story about our the Merchant's House as a site of the Underground Railroad. Yes, of course, I will return to that astonishing discovery. And now I'm going to throw the dog outside. Hang on. Come on, baby, win it. I apologize. According to Cheryl, we had about 1 million views last night. And as you can imagine, we've been swamped with press requests, etc. So I'll get back to that later. Don't worry. So now, back to my soapbox. Over 90 years as a museum, the Merchant's House has survived as the only family home in New York City preserved intact, inside and out, from the 19th century. It was built in 1832 and home to a wealthy merchant family, the Treadwells, and their Irish servants for almost 100 years. And it is complete with the family's stuff, all their original furnishings, household objects, personal possessions, and even their clothing. As such, it is unique, offering the public a view of domestic life in 19th century New York that is unparalleled in its authenticity. To quote renowned architectural critic Ada Louise Huxtable in the New York Times, it is the real thing. One walks through the beautiful doorway into another time and place in New York. Truer words never spoken. But since we're here before the Landmarks Committee, no surprise, our late Federal and Greek Revival building has every landmark designation under the sun, federal, state, and city. Starting with New York City, it is Manhattan's first landmark, designated in 1965 at the very first meeting of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. But that's not all. Do you know how many exterior and interior landmarks there are in New York City? Only 125. And how about residences? Only 6. Federal and state landmark designations will come. Now, I want to give you a little history of the house as a home for 98 years and as a museum for 90. It's nothing short of a miracle of survival, and I want you to appreciate that the house is its monumental importance in the history of the city of New York and that it must be protected. Let me introduce you now, here to Joseph Brewster. Joseph Brewster was a wealthy hatter. He designed and built the house in 1832 in the late Federal and Greek Revival style, which was so fashionable at the time. It was nothing unusual, well, except he built in a narrow passageway, secreted below a built-in chest of drawers on the second floor between 2 bedrooms. 3 years later, Brewster up and decided to move. So he advertised. And as you can see, the advertisement was in the commercial, it's called the commercial advertising, and it's being sold. It was obviously a turnkey sale. It was replete with every convenience. In 1835, prosperous merchant Seabury Treadwell snapped up the house for a cool $18,000 and moved in with his wife Eliza and so very many children and 4 Irish servants. The family lived there for the next the next 98 years to be specific. Now I want you to meet Gertrude Treadwell, who was the Treadwell's last child, born in the house in 1840, and like Brewster has become now, she's a key player and a hero of the house and its survival. She never married and lived her entire life in the house, dying in an upstairs bedroom at the age of 93. Gertrude left the house and all its contents to her niece, who made immediate arrangements to sell literally everything. To give you an idea, the collection today holds 3,000 objects. Now, here we meet, to the rescue, George Chapman. Chapman was a distant cousin of Gertrude's. He got wind of the sale and swooped in, literally, as auctioneers were tagging the Treadwell possessions, and bought the house, all its contents, and founded the museum, which opened in 1936. Thank you, George. Suffice to say, this man was a visionary. It was in the depths of the Depression, and the term historic preservation and landmark were hardly on the tip of everyone's tongue. Please note the 2 buildings flanking the house on your right. They don't last long, and that's so not a healthy thing for our row house. Houses all in a row protected each other. They held each other up. For 3 decades, Chapman struggled to raise the money necessary to maintain the house. Tough times. Besides the Depression, then World War II, the location was far from ideal. It was the Bowery, when the Bowery was still very much the Bowery. Our hero, George Chapman, died in 1959, sadly leaving the house in a grave state of disrepair, with developers lurking behind every profitable corner, as they are wont to do. Next, we have, this is great. Let's fast forward to early 1965, when the merchant's house faces a developer's ball to make way for a garage. provoking a citywide public outcry. The downtown community school held a march through the village to the house, singing, as you can see on the right, they changed the words, singing the anti-Vietnam ballad, "Where have all the landmarks gone? When will they ever learn?" Those kiddies made a splash. It was all over the news. 6 weeks later, Mayor Robert Wagner signed the New York City Landmarks Law in April 1965. The Merchant's House was obviously one of the reasons, and I suppose we have to give Penn Station credit too. Let's go back to our landmark designations, federal, state, and city. As I said, it was first landmark in Manhattan, and it was one of only 20 in 1965. 1966, it was designated a National Historic Landmark. In 1977, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. 1981, it became an interior landmark. And as I said, one today of only 125 and 6 residences. And this brings me to our ornamental plaster, in fact, or all of our plaster, because our plaster, it was everywhere. It's on the walls, it's on the ceiling, and then, of course, the magnificent ornamental plaster and crown moldings in all rooms. According to 2 plaster studies we've undertaken over 14 years, that plaster could very well crumble. And just so you know, all the ceiling in the parlors weigh 4,000 pounds each. That's a lot of plaster. So now let's turn to the museum today and what we do and how. We educate. Here we go. We educate. We care for our collections and we preserve our landmark building. So we offer tours of the house and neighborhood, exhibitions, lectures, living history, concerts, performances. We have thousands of visitors annually, tourists who come from all over the country and the world, scholars, students, and even some New Yorkers. We educate visitors in 19th century architecture, interior design, historic preservation, the immigrant experience, women's history, social history, and now we can educate them about the abolitionist movement and the early days of the Underground Railroad, all with unparalleled authenticity. Now, collections care. A lot of what makes the Merchant's House are the Treadwell's original possessions. You'll see unfinished needlework, 6 daughters, so there's a lot of it. A photo album buried there, a porcelain pin jar, a teacup of Eliza Treadwell's from 1860, and we have 39 19th century dresses. That's a total of 3,000 objects, 250 are on display at any one time. Now we get into some preservation, big part of what we do. The museum and the city of New York have invested literally millions of dollars to preserve the house. And I just show you a sampling here. On the left is our 1832 windows and the stoop that was restored. And of course, we have graffiti all the time. Not good on our white marble. Currently, we are under, that's us, buried behind all of, we look like a fortress, behind all that scaffolding. And we began a restoration, the city began a restoration last May, investing another $5.2 million in the house, which makes me wonder how the city could approve next door. Let's see what's next. Oh. And going back, just to remind you that the house has a decades-long and expensive history of damage that was caused by work performed at adjoining and nearby property. In 1946, the 1826 building to the west, the scene of the proposed crime, was demolished and a 1-story garage erected. Demolition caused immediate damage to the Merchant's House and exposed the west party wall. wall, ensuring decades of future restoration work. In 1988, the building the one to the east of the Merchant's House was demolished, causing major structural damage, cost $1 million, and we were closed off and on for almost 3 years. And there ensued 15 years of restoration to secure the building envelope, east and west walls, north and south facades, and of course, the roof. And then, of course, to the right, after that building was demolished, what is now Manuel Plaza is also the site of the city's third water tunnel. And of course, that they did that blasting. So blasting is not good for an 1832 house. The new building, I guess, seems to be taller and more massive than the original proposal, making the likelihood of damage and collapse even higher. Irreversible damage to the irreplaceable Merchant's House from construction is guaranteed and could well be catastrophic. So now I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of the house so that you can see what's at risk. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Okay, here we are in the ground floor kitchen, and notice the call bells, each with a different tone so the servants would know which room was calling, original to the house. We have here the family parlor. Note the Portdoro marble mantle on your right there. We then have the magnificent front parlor of the Greek Revival double parlor. Get a marble mantle on the right. You see a gas chandelier hanging from the ceiling. You can see some of the crown molding. And there's more of it. It's considered the finest surviving from the period. That's the medallion holding the gas chandelier up. Oh, and here's a picture of that gas chandelier. They're a matching pair. Here are some window treatments. This is above the pier mirror. Pretty remarkable. Now we're going to go upstairs to the bedroom floor, and you'll note the hand-carved mahogany newel post as you go up the stairs. On the left, you're standing on the landing, looking down at the hall and up to the second floor bedrooms and up to the third floor. Now we get to Seabury Treadwell's bedroom, and you can see on the right, those are original wool damask bed hangings. Pretty remarkable. And we have Eliza Treadwell's bedroom and the 4-poster bed that matches the one in Seabury's bedroom. And we know they've always been there because there are marks in the wood. And you'll notice the floor, that is Southern pine, and those boards are something outrageous, like 20 feet long. They don't make trees like that anymore, all original. Now we head on up. We have to skip the third floor because that's museum offices, which is yet another reason that the city should buy the lot, and we can we can open this to the public. And then we end in the garden, which, as you can see, is an oasis for visitors. But unfortunately, our gardener, John Rommel, our head gardener, could not be here, but he is up in arms because shade from the new building, the mass of the new building, will shadow the garden and ruin the 19th century experience that visitors have currently. Now, let's get back to our Underground Railroad. This character sits in the back of the garden, and as you can see, he's in awe and astonished at what we've found. Now we're going to go back to Joseph Brewster so that I can tell you how it all came about. Briefly, I promise. Since the museum he was a wealthy hatter, and he designed the house and he built it as his new home. Since the museum has always told the story of the Treadwells, who lived in the house for 100 years, poor Joseph Brewster got short shrift. Nothing personal, of course. With the proliferation of digital resources, however, 2 years ago, our museum historian, shout out to Annie Haddad, discovered that Brewster was a card-carrying, fervent abolitionist who signed petitions, no less. We learned also that he moved from East 4th Street 3 years after building it to be an elder of an integrated church that was to be built on Rivington Street, and he wanted to be close to his congregation. As president of the church board, Brewster approved the construction of a false floor in the upstairs gallery to harbor freedom seekers. Clearly, the Underground Railroad was in his DNA. We always knew about the passageway. It had been bounced around ever since the house became a museum. But since we knew the Treadwells were not abolitionists, we did not pay much attention to it. And that was the story we told anyway. It was about the Treadwells. So it's no overstatement to say that abolitionist Joseph Brewster and the Hidden Passageway add a new dimension to the story of the house and magnitudes of significance. So now let me take you on a quick tour of the passageway as best I can. So this is the pass-through hall between the two bedrooms. You saw them a little bit earlier. In order to access the passageway, the drawer on the bottom needs to be removed. Once it's removed, there's a hatch, an opening. You lift the hatch, and next thing you know, you have Michael Devonshire heading down the passageway. He's going to speak in a little while, but here he is in all his glory. Here's an image of the passageway. A crude ladder descends 15 feet. It goes from the bedroom floor down through the parlor and ends at the ceiling of the ground floor. Here's another view looking up with a crude ladder. And here's a diagram. Here are some floor plans of the house, and you'll notice, or hard to say, but let me tell you, that it is located on the west wall, and that would be the wall where the construction would be. And as you could see from the images, this is very fragile stuff, and we would not expect it to survive. So now that's our more later about the not tonight, I promise, about the Underground Railroad. New York One just broke the story yesterday, and we'll be saying more about it. So now, what happens if? What happens if the project is approved and construction is going to happen? There are a bunch of things we're going to have to do. We're going to have to protect the original collection, for one thing, and that's 3,000 items, 4 floors, 10,000 square feet. We have to pack it all up, transport it, and store it for an approximate 24 months. And that will cost us $1.75 million. And this is, ages old estimates. Then what we're going to have to do once the collection is out and safe, we need to secure our interior. We need to erect padded scaffolding to stabilize, cushion, and secure the original plaster walls, ceilings, and decorative elements. And that's going to cost us a cool $1.35 million from, again, a 2-year-old estimate. And we have to close the museum, because we won't have a museum to operate and no visitors. And that means we have to rent office space, and we will lose 30 months worth of museum revenue, approximately $1 million. So toting it all up, it comes to a $4.1 million that we don't have. So I'm going to end here just with a reminder of what the LPC is actually supposed to be doing on behalf of the people of New York. And this is their mission: to protect the special places and buildings that bring the city's remarkable history and heritage to life, thus preserving them for future generations. Is there any better than the Merchant's House to do that? And then I love this. This is from this community board resolution to deny the application in 2018, saying that the house is an entirely unique, enormously treasured, fragile, and irreplaceable landmark and museum. Pretty much says it all. So I thank you, and I hope that we can all save the Merchant's House.
Okay, thank you, Pi. We're going to take a moment here. Councilmember Christopher Marte has arrived and would like to speak to the meeting. He has lately been appointed the chair of the subcommittee of the council for landmarks and land use. I hope I have the right order. And he spoke at the board meeting for a prior designation of a prior seeking approval for a building in Soho, and we appreciated his being there, and we welcome him as a friend of the committee. Thank you.
Could we take down the presentation so we can see the council member? Thank you.
Sorry.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me?
Yes, we see you. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank everyone here, the community board members, but more importantly, the community. There's over 100 people on, and I think that just shows the amount of love and care that we have for the Merchant House. I really want to thank the presenter, who has been fighting to preserve and keep New York City history alive for generations. I had a written testimony that I'll submit to the community board, but I just want to talk about my experience a few days at the Merchant House. I was there when Cheryl Willis from New York One was doing her story, and when I looked down this small 2x2 shelf that led into where people literally found their freedom, it was one of the most moving experience I've experienced in my lifetime. And just thinking about it for the past few days and the climate that we're living in, especially where the federal government is trying to undo some of our histories, whether it's rewriting our history textbooks or telling Stonewall to take down their flags. This is a moment where we have to not only recognize, but uplift and protect the history of the civil rights movement and the abolitionist movement. And so I feel like this fight is much greater than, you know, the walls in the Merchant's House. I think this is our symbolic connection to what happened to slavery in our country. And so, you know, this is the age-old battle in New York City, right? Profit, greed from developers, or community, history, and learning from that history and defending that history. And so as the chair of the subcommittee on landmarks, I'm here to stand with the local council member, Harvey Epstein, who was with me that day and felt the same powerful moment that we all experienced. And we're going to continue to fight from the city council. And I know a lot of my colleagues from the outer boroughs as well, Councilmember Natasha Williams and Councilmember Kevin Riley, are really passionate about preserving this history because it's the only relic we have in Manhattan that really connects our city to the history that government after government tried erasing. And so I'm here to do whatever we can to call on LPC, to call on the mayor to make sure that we could protect the Merchant's House, protect our history, and continue to fight and make sure that we don't repeat the wrongdoings of the past. And so, of course, I'll submit a written testimony for the record, but I just wanted to let the community know and the community board know that I'm here in full support. I'll be there rallying with organizers tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. so then we can make sure that the public understands what's at stake at this moment, at this location. And we must stop profit incentives over the history of our people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again. We'll resume. I believe Mr. Heller is to speak next.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Councilmember Marte, Councilmember Epstein, and thank you all at the Community Board for giving us this opportunity to address you today. My name again is Michael Hiller. I have been an historic preservation attorney for the last 30 years. and I am on the faculty as a professor of preservation law and policy at Pratt Institute. I rise in opposition to this application. And before I begin, let me start by saying that I am going to be giving something of a PowerPoint presentation this evening. Not great at it. That's something I have to learn to be better at. But I do want to let you know that I will be showing those slides in a moment. And when I do, you may see some slides that resemble the slides that were submitted and presented by the applicant. I will say to you that the presentation slides that you saw today are in some respects different from what was filed in December of 2025, which is what we received. But I'll get to that in a few. Just by way of background, as you are aware, in 2012, the owner-developer of 27 East 4th Street proposed construction of an 8-story building adjacent to Merchant's House. But CB2, by unanimous vote, and the City Council, by a vote of 42-3, rejected the project out of concern that the proposed building and the process of constructing it would cause serious and irreparable damage to Merchant's House. Indeed, when CB2 rejected the developer's plan, CB2, after noting a series of instances in which the developer's presentation materials weren't quite true, referred in its resolution, and if I may, I would like to share my screen, if I might. Give me 1 second. So sorry, this is taking me a little bit. There we go. How do I share my screen now? Okay, I'll do it this way. Let's try. Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay, can you see that okay? So when CB2 rejected the developer's first plan, CB2, after noting a series of instances in which the developer's statements were regarded as not true, CB2 said this: the deficiencies and inaccuracies adversely affect the credibility of the applicant's other assertions and need to be investigated and rectified before any notifications of use and or bulk are considered, modifications of use or bulk are considered. As I'll get to in a few moments, it's largely the same engineering team whose conclusions you rejected years ago are standing before you today with this new application. In 2020, the developer came back this time with a proposed 7-story building. Previously, it was an 8-story building. The 7-story building adjacent to Merchant's House. Once again, CB2 unanimously rejected that plan as being unsafe to Merchant's House, and further noted that the newly proposed building, even at just 7 stories, quote, the height at 94 feet 5 inches to the roof, and 112 and 5 inches to the top of mechanical equipment, overwhelms the Merchant's House and does not provide a suitable intermediate transition in height from the house to the building at the west of 27 East 4th Street. And that is a problem that you're going to see when we look at their plans. These are the 2 proposals that you're not addressing today. This one here, if you can see my cursor, that's the 7-story building. This is the 8-story building. And if you look over here, down here, those 2 buildings, those are Merchant's House. Now, you were told this evening that the Landmarks Preservation Commission approved this plan right here, the 7-story building. Respectfully, that's not true. What happened was the Landmarks Preservation Commission conditionally approved that plan subject to the preparation and approval of a plaster study to make sure that the interior finishes of Merchant's House were not damaged. That conditional approval was never actually solidified into a full approval. No certificate of appropriateness was ever granted because the developer never submitted the plaster study. And we'll get to why that is in a minute. The commission's approval was disappointing, given that we had submitted and the commission was already in possession of the very plaster study they said they needed to see. Then the commissioners made a stunning admission at the meeting at which they conditionally approved the plan. They were completely unaware of any of the engineering reports and studies that we had submitted to the commission. I know that because one of the commissioners during the meeting actually asked, has the Merchant's House opined on the quality of this plan and whether it would damage Merchant's House? And at another point, someone asked, do we have a plaster study? We had submitted dozens of reports, as well as the plaster study, to the commission. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, the commissioners never saw any of it. In any event, as I mentioned earlier, the approval of this plan right here, one I'm circling, was conditioned on the submission of a plaster study by the developer, and the developer never did it, ostensibly because the developer recognized that a plaster study would confirm that the plaster in Merchant's House would largely be destroyed as a result of the construction. And I'll get into that in a few minutes. So they've now come up with another plan, a taller, heavier building, not 7 stories as we see here, not 8 stories we see here, but 9 stories. A 9-story heavier building adjacent to Merchant's House. So in particular, whereas previously the developer in 2013 proposed an 8-story building, which the city council rejected as unsafe. And whereas the community board rejected a 7-story building as unsafe and overwhelming Merchant's House, now the developer has thought, what a great idea. Let's come up with a 9-story building, which, as I'll get to in a few moments, is even more out of scale, heavier, and likely to cause far more damage than the other 2 proposals, which were shown to cause significant damage if they were to be reformed. Now, and worse, the engineering plans and designs that have been prepared for this new project are essentially, at least the engineering designs, are essentially the same as what CB2 determined to be incomplete and ultimately unsafe to Merchant's House in 2020. Consequently, at the conclusion of my remarks, I'm going to ask you to recommend rejection of this new plan in the same way that you did for the prior 2. The current proposal that the developer shows you appears on page 9 of their presentation materials. I'm sorry, this is page 9. I'm sorry. These are the two buildings that were previously proposed. The newest proposal reaches a height of 9 stories, 103 feet high, which is obviously considerably taller than the 2 buildings that you're looking at right now, and would even further overwhelm the 3.5-story Merchant's House, a landmark which CB2 appropriately observed to be, if I could just make that a little bit bigger, it's the Merchant's House is entirely unique, enormously treasured and fragile and irreplaceable landmark and a museum. It's essentially what Pi said earlier. And as the executive director mentioned to you earlier as well, she informed you of the significance of Merchant's House. And I'd like to explain to you why it is that this other building directly next door, let me see if I can pull that up again. I guess I can't at the moment. Why that building next door, the one that's the 1-story garage, why did the Landmarks Preservation Commission include that in the NoHo Historic District Extension? And that's a really important point, which I'm going to get to in a moment, because it's been conveyed to you that what's really great about their plan is that this new building will be in some way in conformity with the NoHo Historic District Extension, as if to suggest that the whole thing, the whole reason we're here, is that they want to make sure it's consistent with the NoHo Historic District Extension. That is not what happened. The 1-story garage is a non-contributing, non-historic, non-architecturally significant building. Why is it included in the NoHo Historic District Extension? Because the Landmarks Preservation Commission one day woke up and realized that someday some developer might stand right here, right now in front of this community board, and someday in front of the Landmarks Preservation Commission and try to redevelop that 1-story lot. So what they did was they extended the NoHo Historic District right up to Merchant's House, but not including Merchant's House. They just included that garage so that the Landmarks Preservation Commission would have jurisdiction to control the development or the non-development of that building. That's the reason we're here. That's why the commission designated that non-contributing, architecturally insignificant, and historically irrelevant building. It's so that you could protect Merchant's House and so that the commission could preserve Merchant's House. And to the extent that you heard otherwise today, it's just simply not true. In terms of the studies that have been done here, to ensure that all stakeholders were and are fully aware of the steps necessary to protect Merchant's House from adjacent construction, Merchant's House hired some of the most renowned engineering, architectural, and preservation professionals in America to provide substantive reports identifying the risks to Merchant's House and how to eliminate them. In particular, WJA Engineers and Architects, a nationally recognized engineering firm, prepared reports on September 12th, September 6th, 2012, May 13th, 2013, February 5th, 2014, May 9th, 2018, September 17th, 2018, January 8th, 2021, March 30th, 2021, December 8th, 2023. And those are the reports that the commission unfortunately never looked at. Musa Rutledge Consulting Engineers, a geotechnical firm of considerable reputation, prepared geotechnical reports on September 6, 2012, September 16, 2018, and January 8, 2021. Also hadn't been reviews. Atkinson and Noland and David Flannery also submitted reports on plaster. Atkinson and Noland is one of the foremost plaster reconstruction preservation firms in the country. They operate out of Colorado. They came flying in to look at the plaster at Merchant's House. How do we preserve Merchant's House? David Flannery is a local plaster expert. Both of these individuals, both of these groups submitted reports in 2014, 2015, and 2024, all for the purpose of figuring out whether or not adjacent construction would harm the plaster at Merchant's House. And ultimately, they concluded that it would be. And I will explain to you in just a moment. But first, let's go back to the issue concerning scale. So this is their proposal. Take a good look at it. This is that 9-story building that overlooks Merchant's House. As you can see, Merchant's House effectively disappears next to this enormous building, which is considerably higher than the original 19th century building it would be replacing. There is no transition height, just an enormous gulf between the 3.5-story Merchant's House here and the 9-story building hulking over it like a parent disciplining a child. The eminence, the mystique, the grandeur of Merchant's House disappears next to this entirely unnecessary commercial office tower. The applicants comment that the disparate heights of buildings is common to the NoHo Historic District, as I said earlier, is misleading because, first of all, Merchant's House is not in the NoHo Historic District Extension. It was specifically left out. It's not necessary because it's been protected under state, local, and federal law already. It's this property and everything here that is covered by the district extension again, so that they could prevent precisely what you're looking at. The disparate heights in these two buildings and the mass of them, and if I can take a moment here, I also want to show you this. This comes from the presentation which I saw earlier. I just wanted to point out, you see this area right here, this small area here, this is Merchant's House. Look at the size of this building here. It is not just tall, it's deep. This is going to be an exceptionally heavy and tall building that is going to be overwhelming Merchant's House. And as I'll get to in a moment as well, it is also going to weigh it down to the point where it's going to cause massive damage. But let's first talk about something else. Let's talk about snowdrifts. So if you look at the area right here, you see, this is Merchant's House. This is from their presentation. And this is the building next door they want to build. Now, what you see during heavy snowstorms, and we just had this experience the last couple of weeks, snow is going to hit this facade right here, and it's going to land on the top of Merchant's House. Merchant's House is a nearly 200-year-old roof that's going to have collective snowdrifts that are going to accumulate primarily because of this huge wall that basically is going to stop the snow. It's going to roll down, and it's going to be literally sitting on the top of Merchant's House. The developer, the last two applications, was specifically instructed to do a snow drift analysis and study. They never did it. Let's be clear. That roof is not going to be able to support the snow that would accumulate, for example, that happened over the last week or so. That ice and snow would literally fall through the slate roof. And if this huge facade is going to start capturing snow and dropping it and depositing it on the roof of Merchant's House is just not going to last. Secondly, you can see here that there is a chimney for Merchant's House. Let me see if I can get a better picture of that for you. Yeah, you see that? It's a little bit better. This is how high the chimney goes. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about the building code, but a chimney cannot exhaust here into the windows here. You can't have that happening because that creates a health hazard for the people in this building, whether they're sleeping there or just in their offices. So ordinarily, what would happen is, under the building code, typically you just take the chimney and you run it up the side of the building. That way it can go higher than the rooftop here and then not exhaust into people's windows. That is not what would happen here because this is a landmark building. You cannot extend the chimney effectively 40.5 feet higher to go over this building. It won't be approved by landmarks because you would be fundamentally altering its character. So the plan by the developer is to take what's in this chimney and bring it out through here laterally and then run it through the building here with an HVAC system. Now, there are all sorts of problems with that. Let's begin with the fact that Merchant's House is not owned by Pye Gardner. It's not owned by me. It's owned by the city of New York and the Parks Department. What's going to happen? How are they going to get into that building? Is the building going to give the city of New York an easement? Is there going to be some sort of license arrangement? Who's going to maintain the HVAC system where the exhaust comes from this building into that building? And how is the air going to get pushed up? First pushed laterally this way and pushed all the way up over 100 feet out to exhaust down the top. Again, this is another issue the Parks Department asked the developer to explain and resolve. They never did. The problem that we are concerned about, obviously, is that if there's a problem with the exhaust, especially if it's on a weekend or after hours, how are we going to resolve that? Literally, the emissions are going to back up into the basement of Merchant's House and create a significant health hazard. That's an issue that should have been addressed before. In the past, the developer has proposed to come up and resolve that issue during the planning stages. With all due respect to the developer and its design team, the time to do that is before you build the building, not after and not during, but now. So that's a second problem. And lastly, I would say the most important issue, and the one that we've been focusing on to date, is the potential for damage to Merchant's House. The weight of this new building, including its 2.5-foot thick mat foundation, would compress the soil beneath it and drag Merchant's House down, causing it to fracture. The developer claims that the soil beneath the new building would compress just by 1/4 of an inch. But with respect to Mr. Rubenacker, that's just not true. Musa Rutledge Consulting Engineers, a certified engineering firm, has confirmed that underneath the middle of that mat foundation, the soil would compress not by 1/4 of an inch, but by a full inch and up to 1 3/4 inches. At the edges of the mat foundation, there would be compression of at least 1/2 an inch and up to 3/4 of an inch. And here's why. A review of slide 51, hopefully I'm going to get to slide 51. Maybe I should do it here. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's see if this is right here. Yes. This is slide 51. This is that 2.5-foot thick mat foundation. You see that? And it actually says 2 foot 6 inches thick mat foundation. And the middle of this foundation, as I said, the soil compression is going to be between 1 inch and 1 3/4 inches. But at the edges, according to Musa Rutledge, it's going to compress at 1/2 an inch to 3/4 of an inch. You heard Mr. Rubenacker say 1/4 of an inch is the maximum that you can have soil compression adjacent to a landmark building. And yet Musa Rutledge has already confirmed that it's going to be at least twice that much and possibly 3 times that much at 1/2 an inch to 3/4 of an inch. And the mat foundation edge is right here, right next to Merchant's House. So if this goes down 1/2 an inch to 3/4 of an inch, we have a huge problem. What kind of problem? This is out of WJE engineering report. And I'm just going to focus you on this last sentence here. The potential settlement beneath the mat edges is significantly greater than the TPPN 1088 limit of 1/4 an inch for adjacent buildings. So that tells you one thing. And again, this is the mat foundation that abuts Merchant's House. What's that going to mean? Whoops. Sorry about that. Settlement of 3/4 of an inch may result in significant damage to Merchant's House and potentially structurally compromise the structure. Let's just take a moment and pause and think about what that means. We have an 1832 building constructed on a rubble foundation. They are exceeding the limits permitted under the best of circumstances to build adjacent to a landmark building. They're doing it to 2 to 3 times the maximum. And as a consequence of that, we're not talking about the plaster yet. We're talking about keeping the building standing up. And according to WJE, one of the most well-respected engineering firms in the country, settlement of 3/4 of an inch could result in potential structural compromise of the building. That is a serious, serious problem that the developer has not been able to work out. And before the developer gets on and says, we've changed the engineering plan, the SOE, the structural engineering plan, is the same or almost identical to what they previously proposed and what was previously the subject of WJE's reports. Again, the reports that the commission never saw. Now, you heard about the passageway. The passageway is on the west wall of Merchant's House. The passageway is on the west wall of Merchant's House. Why is that important? Because they want to build right along the west wall of Merchant's House. If there's going to be structural compromise, we aren't going to just lose them. It's not just there's going to be a fractured beam here or there. We could very well lose the Underground Railroad passageway because it is right up against where the construction is going. Again, another serious problem. Now, we recognize the developers argued that soil compression will only be 3/16 of an inch or something less than 1/4 of an inch, notwithstanding the report that I just put in front of you. However, what Mr. Rubenacker did not tell you is that neither he nor anyone else on the design team has ever done a soil settlement analysis. Instead, the developer has done what's called a mat deflection or foundation settlement analysis. What's the difference? And this is probably the most important thing I'm going to talk about here. So I hope that I can really hold your attention because I know I've been talking a long time. Imagine if I want to talk to you about the difference between a soil settlement analysis and a mat deflection analysis. Let's say, for example, you want a dark room like this, and you had to stand up on your bed to change a light bulb. Okay? You're standing on your bed trying to change a light bulb. You can't reach. You're about an inch short. So you go up and you get yourself like a coffee table book of some kind. You stand on it. Now, you know, coffee table books bend a little bit, right? So you stand on this coffee table book and you can reach the light bulb. So why am I telling you about that? The coffee table book is like that mat foundation. And the mattress is the soil. When you stand on a book, when you stand on that mat, when the building goes on that mat foundation, it's going to flex, it's going to bend. Okay? That's what they measure. They didn't measure how far down the mattress goes. They did not do a soil settlement analysis. So as a consequence of that, they have no idea how much the building is going to sink down to the bottom, to the bottom. But WJE does, because WJE did that analysis and confirmed that that soil is going down in the middle, at least 0.62 inches to 1.16 inches, which is well ahead of the 3/4 of an inch that could take Merchant's House down. That's what's at stake here. This is not just a situation where they want to make a building fit in with the rest of the NoHo Historic District Extension. We are talking about an existential threat to one of the most important landmarks New York City has ever had. That's what we're talking about. Now, I mentioned earlier. I'm sorry, Chenault.
You mentioned how much more do you need to cover? The time is beyond what we expected.
I would say I'm almost done, and I realize now I have been talking a long time. And I thank you.
Would you please
from the bottom of my heart to give me this time.
We understand, and perhaps not quite as much details needed for each other. Thank you.
Understood. I would just say this. If you look at, and I'll send this to the community board, the 2021 report by WGE says, quote, GMS, that's Mr. Rubenacker's firm, has provided a structural analysis of the proposed mat foundation, not a geotechnical analysis of the stress distribution and deformation within the soil volume, which means he never did a soil settlement study at all. I should also mention to you, and I'll skip this part, that at the conclusion of the last report by WGE, they said, quote, in short, there are many unanswered questions, direct quote, many unanswered questions that must be resolved to prevent the deleterious impacts to neighboring buildings, including Merchant's House. And leaving the structure for a moment, and now just focusing on the plaster, as I said, we had multiple plaster studies done. And this is what Atkinson and Nolan concluded in July of 2024. Quote, based upon the results obtained in this study to date, it is our opinion that the anticipated foundation settlement at Merchant's House Museum associated with construction of the proposed new building will likely produce damage to the historic original plaster finishes covering the exterior masonry walls, interior partition walls, and intersection of ceilings and walls. This analysis indicates that the damage will already occur even at 1/4 of an inch settlement, and that the magnitude of damage will increase with increasing foundation settlement. So if it goes up to 3/4 of an inch or 1.16 inches, the entire plaster interior is coming down, even assuming that the Merchant's House survives. Atkinson and Nolan also said, and this is kind of scary, that when the building next door is going down slightly, Merchant's House will sort of, it's called racking, will shift like a cardboard box without a top and a bottom. And it'll be like a parallelogram like this. When that happens, there'll be cracking inside the walls. And the substrate that holds on to the closest level of plaster is going to separate. What Atkinson and Nolan explained was that, quote, the damage may not manifest itself as visible damages for months or even years after the construction. The integrity of the plaster is clearly at risk. Cracking and other types of plaster will occur, not must, may occur, will occur as a result of foundation settlement. What does that mean? All those discussions about crack monitors and vibration monitors, they won't know where the damage is happening until a year or two later, maybe longer. So those monitors are not going to help at all. And lastly, I just want to quickly talk about two quick items. Number one, Pi mentioned cost and what has to be done with Merchant's House. One thing that Pi did not mention, which I was surprised about Pi, is that in order to remove those furnishings from Merchant's House, they got to take them apart. That bed in Seabury Treadwell's room, in his wife's room, in the kids' rooms, they all have to be taken apart. I don't know if any of you have moved out of a house.
Or could we just consider this globally, and we'll ask you that you submit an accurate
Can I just read I just have one quick closing, Chenault? I just have one quick closing thing, and I'll be quick. The Landmarks Law was written to prevent outcomes like this. The Landmarks Law was enacted to protect not only the world famous buildings like the iconic Empire State Building or Central Park or other things like that, but also especially for the
Hello?
are the best of the present.
Okay.
The loss of Merchant's House would do violence to that principle and that value. I would respectfully ask you to deny this application and to do so with gusto to make sure that nothing like this comes back again. Thank you again so much for your patience and your time. I know I spoke for a long time. Thank you again.
Thank you. And would you please send along to the office the materials that you just showed? So we'll have
I
them.
absolutely will. Thank you so much.
We'll now move on to the next portion, which is the testimony, and we'll begin with our guest from Village Preservation.
Good evening.
Dana Tasweta.
Great.
You can begin.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Chenault, and to all the members of the committee for your time and for allowing us to speak for a moment. I will be brief. My name is Dina Taswinter, and I'm the Director of Preservation and Research, as Chenault said, speaking on behalf of Village Preservation this evening. So as you've heard, the Merchant's House Museum is one of the most significant and important historic sites, not only in our neighborhood, but in all of New York City. It's one of our city's first landmark structures and its only intact example of an early 19th century row house on both the interior and exterior. It is also a publicly owned resource which belongs to and serves the people of the city of New York. Sometimes when we are tasked with looking at applications like these and the potential impact changes at one historic property could have on another one neighboring it, we end up having to weigh the private property interests of one owner versus another, but that's not the case here. Any harm that befalls the Merchant's House Museum will directly impact the people of the city of New York, to whom this landmark belongs and who, by the thousands, take advantage of its unique educational offerings every year, as do many tourists from all over the world. This proposal must be viewed within this important context. Now, you've just heard representatives from the Merchant's House Museum speak to why their expert analysis of the proposed construction demonstrates that it would put the house at such risks and what the likely outcomes would be from the proposed plan moving forward under the proposed conditions. These statements and analyses speak for themselves, and rather than taking any more time repeating them, I, on behalf of Village Preservation, will briefly focus on an area that might otherwise be overlooked and address those who might believe that the proposed precautions and procedures would be sufficient to protect the museum. So even if you do believe that, there is unfortunately very good reason to nevertheless be extremely concerned about this plan moving forward and the danger it could still present to the merchant's house. And that's because, unfortunately, we've time and again seen regulations, agreements, and requirements for sensitive construction like this violated or ignored, with both developers and the city agencies charged with oversight guilty of allowing this to occur. Even if that is a big if, one has faith that the proposed requirements should keep the house safe, there's unfortunately little reason, based upon repeated recent history, to feel confident that these protocols will be scrupulously adhered to. Any slip, any minor oversight, any slight deviation, to say nothing of more major ones, could have disastrous and irreversible consequences for the museum. And so this must also be part of the calculus of considering the merits of allowing such large-scale construction, including the proposed construction that is now larger than what was previously even approved by LPC, to take place next door to the museum. So to conclude, we know that the committee takes these issues very seriously, and you and we all have unfortunately witnessed multiple cases of buildings in Community Board 2 in just the last few years that have been damaged, compromised, or destroyed by work that deviated from safety requirements and protocols, even ones that were approved. And so none of these damaged historic sites were even as vulnerable or as publicly important as the merchant's house is. We trust that you understand the risk and the gravity of the situation, and we sincerely hope that the Landmarks Preservation Commission, who will ultimately make the decision here, will also understand this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And would you kindly pass your script along to Florence?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, or tomorrow morning. Thank you. We'll now move to the public testimony. We're going to begin with those who have signed up to speak. And if there's time after they've spoken, then we will entertain questions from the other people who are in the room and have not signed up to speak. Could I ask everyone who's not on the committee to turn your cameras off so that we can see clearly what's what? And I'll call the first few and then Eugene will pick up. And please turn on your camera and your microphone and then turn them off when you're finished. First is Patrick Caccione.
Excuse me, Chenault, before we move on, we should remind everybody about the 2-minute time limit.
Oh, yes.
I will be letting people know when they've got 30 seconds
It
left.
can't be said often enough.
Also, rather than have a very long back and forth, I mean, people should, of course, say what there is to say, but if there are questions, I will keep a list of the questions that are the repeat questions so that they can all be asked at once when it is the committee's chance to talk. So if any questions that come up during the public session, I will note and we'll ask them all at once. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Patrick. Are you here?
Patrick was promoted earlier. He should be able to unmute and turn on his camera.
We'll go along and come back. Michael Devonshire. No.
I'm sorry. Michael is being promoted now.
Okay.
You're starting from the middle of the list, Chenault. If you go all the way to the top, Teresa Utherwalt, pardon my pronunciation, should be the first one signed up.
I'm sorry, you mean that they're not, that these people are not?
You have Michael Devonshire now, so
thank you.
Okay, then perhaps we need then to go to Eugene, or if Eugene has correct.
I have the list, Chenault. So if you want to go,
okay, then
if it's okay with you, go with Michael Devonshire and then Teresa. And I'm just going to leave it at Teresa. Forgive my pronunciation.
Michael.
I hate to say, can you hear me? But
Yes,
okay, good. Thank you. Two things. I promise I'll be brief. Michael Hiller really covered much of what I needed to discuss. Two things that have happened. You know, I've been involved with the Merchants House. I first came to the city in 1979 as a National Trust intern, and I was doing documentation drawings of the framing of the roof of the house. My firm did an historic structure report of the house in 1990, and we've been involved with the house ever since. In our HSR, the Historic Structure Report, we pointed out the fragility of the interior plaster. If not to go too far into the weeds, but when plaster is installed in an historic house with the original installation, plaster is pushed between pieces of wood that are called lath. And when it's pushed between as a semi-liquid material, as it's pushed between the lath, it kind of flops over and creates what's called a key, which is the mechanical thing that holds plaster in place. Unfortunately, typically on a ceiling, when plasterers were working over their heads, the keys are much more fragile than they are on walls. And so one of the first things that happens when there is a lot of vibration is those keys break and the plaster fails. In a situation like we can expect is going to happen with the construction of the building next door, to say that the plaster inside the merchant's house will be adversely affected is an extreme understatement.
I need to give you a 30-second warning here.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right. What I will say is that there will be irreparable damage. Even with monitors, what a monitor tells you is that damage has already occurred. We have original finishes in the merchant's house. They will be destroyed forever. If the second thing, I am the one who crawled down into that space with the Underground Railroad, and I can tell you the spirit and the fear that one senses when you are in that space is unbelievable. And what is going to happen if because of the tolerance of the drawers within that closet, if there is a settlement of even 1/4 of an inch, you'll never be able to get into that drawer again. You won't be able to pull that drawer out to get into that space, into that Underground Railroad space. So essentially what I'm asking is that this project be denied because it will cause irreparable damage to not only an individual landmark, but an interior landmark. One of the two, as far as I'm concerned, most important historic buildings in New York City, the Morris Jumel Mansion and the Merchants House Museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And would each person please, as Michael has, identify your connection to the house, the district, or an organization that you're with. Thank you.
All right, Chenault, if that's okay with you, the next person is Teresa.
Go on one after the other without waiting for me.
Teresa is promoted, followed by Asher Last Day. Pardon my pronunciation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Teresa Utherald, and I'm representing the East 4th Street Block Association, and we are unequivocally opposed to this development. We have a change.org petition with 16,654 signatures opposing the development. 14 years ago, I stood here before you in person the first time to testify against this development. What has happened since then? We've had multiple proposals, one worse than the next. The Merchants House has spent over $1 million on engineers, lawyers, etc. to protect our house. That's right, it's our house. We, the people of New York, own this house. And that money could have been spent for preservation, for education programs. And it's important to consider that there is absolutely no need for this building. Office space is at a record vacancy rate in Manhattan, and there's active discussions about converting empty office space to residential housing. The owner can develop a contiguous lot on Lafayette Street. and economically actually earn a higher return on a bigger, more efficient building than actually develop this incredibly small and awkward lot. I can sit here and tell you that the aesthetics of this building are terrible, but I think the most important argument to leave you with is that the construction of this building will irreversibly destroy the aesthetics of our block when the Merchants House Museum collapses. This lot cannot be developed. The Merchants House is our block's OG building. No building has the right to exist that damages it. And I want to go back to something that Pi Gardner said. The first landmark that was protected by the LPC when it was first created was the Merchants House Museum in 1965. And
Sorry
at the
to
time,
interrupt. You've got 30 seconds left. Thank you.
thank you. At the time, in 1965, one of the reasons it got so much attention is that so many of the neighborhood's children lobbied and protested and demonstrated and drew artwork to support this house. It's not hard to imagine why a house like this would captivate the imagination of children. I would ask you, what would you have the future generation of New Yorkers see? Would you have them go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to tell them about the Merchants House? Or would you protect this house so future generations can see and live the history of our city? Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
So the next person is Asher Lastday, followed by Ashley Semrick. Pardon my pronunciation. Asher Lastday was promoted earlier. I don't see you on now. Next person would be Ashley Semrick, to be followed by Patrick, is it Ciccone or Ciccone?
Ciccone.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. I'm Ashley Semrick. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the community board for having us share our voices, and to everyone who's spoken in support of the Merchants House. I'm right there with you. I'm a veteran educator in New York City. I've been teaching for 16 years. I'm also a licensed city tour guide. I am a public historian, and I've been volunteering at the Merchants House for 5 years. And Teresa just said the connection to students and children. And as an educator, a lifelong educator, I want to tell you how critical it is that the students in our city can come visit a space like this. My job as a teacher is one thing. My job as a public historian is another. Public historians interpret history for the lay public. We tell the public why they should care about history. And the Merchants House Museum is a singular, fragile, remaining time capsule of a lost era in New York City. And 90% of the staff at Merchants House is volunteer. We give our time to tell the stories of this house, of her inhabitants, of the Treadwell family, and now of Joseph Brewster and his abolitionist work, which is absolutely astounding that in Black History Month, we can announce the findings that turn this house into a much more complex story. Now, I can't believe, honestly, I'm frankly dumbfounded that we have to come on here and beg for the preservation of a landmark in the city of New York. When you look online, this house is listed as one of the finest specimens of a historic house in the entire country. And when people come to the Merchants House to do their tours with us guides, as we move them through the house and tell them the stories and the history that our house holds about New York and the people who've lived there, our guests are dumbfounded. They're transported back in time, and they're often telling us, thank you so much. I never knew there was so much history here. You've made it come alive. And that's what site-specific history and interpretation does. Now, the thing is, we also tell these guests
30 seconds, please. Thank you.
Thank you. About the battle that we have been facing next door, ongoing. And these guests, New York, country, from the world, are horrified. They want to know why it is that a landmark building has to consistently fight for its right to live. We know the plaster will get damaged. We've heard Michael and Pi say it's not just the plaster, it's the house itself. And I would really hate to be the developers and the board who approves such a development plan when we've literally got history on the line here. New York City history, abolitionist history, Black history in a time when history is being erased. We're vehemently against this development, and I thank you for your time to speak.
Thank you.
Please, everyone, try to observe the time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Patrick Ciccone, to be followed by Camille Sherkowitz. Pardon my pronunciation.
Hi, should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Patrick Ciccone. I'm an architectural historian, co-author of Bricks and Brownstone, which features the Merchant's House prominently. I've been part of the team with the Merchant's House curator, helping verify this amazing discovery that the Merchant's House, beyond its already overwhelming historic significance, was also a stop on the Underground Railroad. This elevates the building and the site to a almost cosmic level of historic significance in New York City and nationwide, connecting this historic landmark, interior landmark, national historic landmark with all the themes of American history, Black history, enslavement, just giant issues where we have the physical remnant of this space of concealment and hiding. You just can't get any more significant than this. And this other speakers have underlined the physical threat to the building, but I want to reiterate a point that Michael Hiller said in the conception of the site next door and its relation to the district. What any plan for this adjacent site needs to have foremost is protection and protection of the Merchant's House so that no harm can ever be done to it and that it remains operational during construction. I think that, as other speakers have pointed out, this site is owned by the city of New York. We, the people of New York, control its fate. And the overwhelming interest in this discovery, we just want to give an idea of the scale of just the New York One story. There were over 6 million views
seconds,
for this one snippet of this larger story. So I think that there's a wider, huge potential audience of people that want to see the landmarks and its connection to these broader pictures of American history, in that we can tell the story. Thanks.
So the next speaker is Camille Sherkowitz, to be followed by Emily Hill Wright.
Hi. Oh, there's something wrong with my camera. Let me let's see.
We understand you all right.
Okay, great. All right. Sorry. Okay. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I am Camille Sherkowitz. I'm the curator and collections manager of the Merchant's House. Thank you for your time. I'm thanking everyone else for being here and supporting the house. The danger by the proposed construction extends to our interior spaces and our collection, which is why you're hearing from me. And we cannot take any chances with the Merchant's House. It is not replaceable. And LPC agrees with us, since we've been declared one of the few interior landmarks. As has been mentioned, the decorative plaster has been noted as the finest surviving, perhaps the only surviving example of ornamental plaster of this kind. The Merchant's House stewards a world-class decorative arts collection that includes furniture, dresses, and personal objects from the Treadwell family. These objects were found in the house when it became a museum in 1936, and it's this authenticity that is most threatened by construction. In many of our rooms, the furniture is in the same place it was when it was installed in 1835. Those bolts and screws that were carried, placed, and pieces assembled in those very same spots. It's an astounding window into the way people lived in the past, the spaces they occupied, and how they moved through them, whether in a visible or clandestine way. It is this unique thing that we lose when we have to deinstall the collection during construction next door. As a collection manager, when the idea of relocating a collection comes up, the standard professional guidance is to say, no, don't do it. Find any other way. Relocating a collection, as would be necessary during construction, is time-consuming, expensive, and risky. We've estimated that it will take an additional 6 months of closure to prep the collection to be moved. The packing, transit, storage, and reinstallation of the collection has been projected to cost $1.75 million. This cost, however, does not account for the ornamental plaster, which we have been told will definitely be damaged. The estimated cost of stabilizing and preserving what we can is approximately $1.35 million. But this
30
is
seconds,
really,
please.
thank you. This is really not about money. The development will cause serious damage to the building, the collection, and the landmarked interior spaces, no matter what. So I'm here to urge the committee to reject this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Emily Hill Wright, to be followed by Joey Stocks.
Hello, thank you so much to the committee for your time this evening and to all of our supporters here. My name is Emily Hill Wright, and I am the Director of Operations at the Merchants House Museum. The museum receives between 12 and 15,000 visitors annually from all over the country and across the globe. As you heard from Ashley earlier, without fail, visitors are shocked to learn that such a priceless and important landmark could possibly be threatened. Since 2024, we've had thousands and thousands of people to have submitted letters online to City Hall in opposition to the proposed development next door, and over 4,200 physical letters have been written. As the community board knows, tourism is a huge economic engine in our city, and places like the Merchants House are what make New York a worldwide destination. Should the construction next door move forward, the sad reality is that the Merchants House would be forced to close our doors. Even in the absolute best case scenario, where only minimal damage occurs, the risk is simply too high. The expected damage to our historic plaster means that literally thousands of pounds of plaster will be at risk of plummeting 13 feet to the floor. It would not be safe for our irreplaceable collection to remain in the house, and it certainly would not be safe for staff, volunteers, and visitors to be on site while such risky construction takes place next door. Closing the museum to the public comes at a financial cost, the cost of renting office and storage space, and crucially, lost revenue from admissions, public programs, educational programs, tours, shop sales, rentals, and more. The current estimate, as you've heard, of these costs is $1 million. However, the real cost, please. Thank you. The real cost comes to the people of New York, losing access to our city's history. The proposed building is thus wildly inappropriate, and I ask the committee tonight to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joey Stocks, to be followed by Rachel Morrow.
Can you see me? Hi. Thank you very much to the community board for this opportunity. My name is Joey Stocks, and I am the creative director of Summoners Ensemble Theater. For the last 14 years, the Merchants House Museum has been our artistic home and a vital partner in bringing history and literature to life for hundreds each season. The proposed development next door threatens not just the physical integrity of this 1832 landmark, but the thriving cultural ecosystem it supports. Our recent 2025 production of A Christmas Carol at the Merchants House alone drew audiences from across the globe, yet the heart of our support remains fiercely local. Nearly 60% of our patrons live in New York State, with remarkable 21.6% of our Manhattan audience coming from the Lower East Side and over 16% from the immediate NoHo neighborhood. This data proves that the Merchants House is not a dusty relic, but a vibrant, living economic engine that drives foot traffic, commerce, and cultural engagement for our specific community. To risk damaging this irreplaceable structure is to risk erasing a cornerstone of our neighborhood's identity and economy. Please oppose this development. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rachel Morrow, to be followed by Allison Heiser. Rachel Morrow. I see, I don't see her. So go to the next, Allison Heiser.
Actually, I see Rachel in the participant list, but she's not promoting to panelist. I'll try again.
Or we could just unmute her.
That's true. I'll do that too.
Whatever you think, Eugene.
I unmuted her.
Okay, great.
Hi, Rachel. If you'd like to give your testimony, you should be permitted to speak at this point. Okay, Mark, maybe we should move on to the next speaker.
Next speaker is Allison Heiser, to be followed by Eric Worthman.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My connection to the Merchant's House is very personal. Of course, I've been a member of the museum for years and have donated to the preservation of this magnificent house. Then a couple of years ago, I was working on my family genealogy when I came across the name Nichols in my family tree. The name was familiar from reading several books about the Merchant's House over the years. I did some further research on the name, and sure enough, Effingham Nichols, who lived in the Merchant's House for several years with his wife, Elizabeth Treadwell, the daughter of Seabury and Eliza Treadwell, was indeed a distant cousin of mine. We share a distant grandfather. I was thrilled to know that one of my ancestors lived in the Merchant's House. Every time I visit, I feel a special kinship with the house, and that thread of history that connects us feels tangible. Think about how many other threads connect other people to the past, to the Merchant's House, and to other beautiful houses that still stand in New York City. The past isn't dead and meaningless. It's alive, sacred and fragile, and must be preserved. And now with this new discovery of the Underground Railroad passage, it's even more sacred. To allow any construction at all to go forward next to the Merchant's House would be to destroy those fragile ties to the past. Please deny this development proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Eric Worthman, to be followed by Giorgio Bovenzi.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Eric Worthman. I am a retired construction engineer, live in the neighborhood and have for many years. And there's been plenty of testimony about the possible effects of the construction, the adjacent construction on the structure of Merchant's House. And just to add my voice to that, I have not reviewed the studies done specifically for the Merchant's House, but based on the experience I've had over a career in various construction projects where you have a large building being built adjacent to an older structure, a fragile structure like the Merchant's House, particularly with the interior landmarking, the best laid plans really just don't provide any guarantees. We can't know that there's a 100% guarantee against some kind of catastrophic damage to the Merchant's House. And that's the sum total of what I really wanted to say tonight, just to add my voice to that. And for that reason, I think this project really, the proposed new construction really should not go ahead. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Giorgio Bovenzi, to be followed by Caroline Costello.
Good evening, and thank you. I'm Giorgio Bovenzi. I'm a resident of East 4th Street on the same block where the Merchant's House is located, and have lived on that block for several decades. And I've been closely aware of the developers' attempts year after year to build next to the Merchant's House since the start in 2012. I will be brief. I strongly oppose this development, but more than that, I feel it outrageous that they keep coming back for approval of structures that each time are bigger and larger, knowing as they know and have admitted to know that digging and building the new structure creates risk for the merchant's house. And the risk gets bigger each time because each time the structure they propose is a larger one. This is reckless and irresponsible, and it's an abuse of the time that this committee is kindly allowing. So I want to join Michael Hiller's recommendation that this committee send a strong message of denial once and for all. It would be inappropriate to allow a building that puts at critical risk a world-class monument like the Merchant's House. And even more so, where this new building serves no social or community or historical purpose. So on that basis, I urge the committee to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Caroline Costello, to be followed by Michael Rahill.
Great. Thank you guys for hearing us today. I am an educator and also a volunteer at the Merchant's House and have been for about 5 years now. I've given tours to all different kinds of people, from older people who have lived in the neighborhood for generations to most recently a group of public school students from Queens who have just moved here from different countries. And each one of those people get to learn about the history of not just the Treadwells and the Merchant's House, but also about the city. And for some, the students, their new city and the immigrants that helped shape not just the house, but the city as well. And it was great to see their excitement and being like, people actually lived here, people actually touched these things. And their amazement is really amazing. The development that has been proposed has robbed the house of almost 15 years of opportunity to really grow what the house can be, in terms of its impact and research and ability to restore things. And so I really urge the community board to deny their proposal. The development is a building that looks like a million other buildings, but the Merchant's House is a very singular building. So I believe that the only thing that is correct is to just reject it, and to help actually support New York City history and uplift this landmark for everyone in the community, the city, and the visitors around the world to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michael Rahill, to be followed by Alan Day.
Hi, my name is Michael Rahill. I'm an interior designer and NoHo historian. I also played Effingham Nichols as a groom during a historic reenactment at the Merchant's House Museum. So sort of delighted to hear that someone was a descendant of Effingham as a cousin. The only way to ensure the integrity of the Merchant's House is to say no to this building. The structural monitoring simply automates the writing out and cause of death on the death certificate for the museum should this proceed. This isn't simply a lot-to-lot matter or even a neighborhood matter. This building is a precious public resource and should be seriously considered within the context of understanding the history of Manhattan as a whole. A friend who lives in South Carolina just texted me, literally just 20 minutes ago, about the Underground Railroad discovery of the museum tonight, unprompted. I mean, I think the reach is massive for this site. The only way that the developer can truthfully guarantee a lack of damage to the Merchant's House Museum is if they are in possession of a time machine with which they can travel back in time after the inevitable destruction occurs from their work. They're being disingenuous at best and wantonly lying at worst. I have studied the history of NoHo extensively for over a decade, and I've given lectures and walking tours for years, specifically regarding Colonnade Row around the corner. One of the central pillars of my talk revolves around how much more complete the picture of the neighborhood would be if the movement to advocate for historic architecture in New York and properly steward historic structures came to pass just 50 or 60 years earlier. The dearth of extant antebellum structures in NoHo, let alone Manhattan, is quite staggering. Bond Street once had 58 Greek Revival and federal townhouses lining the street from Broadway to the Bowery. Now there are only 9 in various states of alteration. What's even more staggering, a Valentine's Manual of the City of New York in 1917 surveyed Bond Street, found there are only 26 extant antebellum townhouses.
30 seconds, please.
17 of those 26 of those buildings have now been destroyed within recent memory. You'll be condemning this magnificent singular cultural gem of New York history to destruction and erasure if you allow this 9-story commercial building to go up next door. You'll be playing with fire, and New Yorkers, much like we've never forgotten the criminal destruction of Penn Station, will never forget who allowed passage of this project, which will undoubtedly destroy the incredible museum as a city resource. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Alan Day, to be followed by Joy Anderson.
Hi,
everyone. Thank you so much to the community board.
Excuse me just a moment. We will not
Go.
have time to have questions from those who have not signed up, and we'll continue with those who have until they've all been heard. Thank you. Please.
Thank you. So again, thank you to the community board for allowing me to speak. My name's Alan Day, and I'm a resident of New York City living on 36th Street. I'm really humbled to be speaking after so many historians and people who are eminently educated in the historical fabric of this great city. And for me, really, the Merchant's House is just a treasure. It's such a rare and vivid connection to our history as one of those few protected residential interiors in the city. I've taken my father there, my brother there, and I'm always just so proud to show them this part of our city. With the discovery of history related to the Underground Railroad on the grounds, I think there's absolutely no excuse. So I'm going to be really short. We must protect this landmark. Anything short of that would be truly a dereliction of duty on the part of this commission and on all of us. And so I just want to say, please deny this application. I stand in support of everyone who's spoken before me with all of their great historical context. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joy Anderson, to be followed by David Mulkins.
Hi. Hi. You can't see me. I don't know what's going on. But you can see the underside of my table here. I was a long time volunteer at the Merchant's House back in the early 80s. And even then there were threats from developers. I mean, that was just prime space. And one of the things that the presenter pointed out was that these neighborhoods get revived by artists and they get priced out by developers. But one of and I was also a longtime member of the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 8, which is the Upper East Side. One of the things I learned on the Community Board 8 Landmarks Committee is that the developers come and they paint this pie in the sky, rosy picture, but then when the actual work begins and when the actual damage happens to adjoining buildings, which is what will happen to the merch, they just disappear into thin air. Therefore, as we used to say on Community Board 8, move to disapprove. Thank you.
Thank
you. The next speaker is David Mulkins.
Hi, I'm the president of the Bowery Alliance of Neighbors and author of the recent book, The Bowery, A Pictorial History. Architects and engineers have testified that the 113-foot proposed office tower next door to the 4-story Merchant House Museum would have a catastrophic impact on the structural survival of this storied but fragile, irreplaceable New York City landmark. Built in 1832 with a late Federal style exterior and Greek Revival interior, it is the city's only 19th century family house preserved intact both inside and out. As a 25-year public high school history and cinema studies teacher, I asked you to recognize that unlike mere facades, which we observe much like looking at a painting on a wall, the Merchant's House is for students of history a profoundly meaningful 3D experience, allowing us to walk in the shoes of the people that lived, worked, laughed, loved, and died there. When Henry James Washington Square novel was turned into the multi-Oscar winning Olivia de Havilland film, The Heiress, a vivid portrait of 19th century New York, its Oscar-winning art direction was patterned after the blueprints of none other than the Merchant House Museum. The Merchant's House represents the city's commercial history as well as a narrative of middle-class life, the lives of women, and the lives of Irish immigrant servants. Its links to the Underground Railroad are profoundly important. Opened to the public in 1936, the 186-year-old
please.
Merchant House is a vital, irreplaceable New York City treasure. Please reject the developer's application for 27 East 4th Street. Thank you very much.
Chenault, that's the list that I had from the website. If it's okay with you, I will give a last call for the people who didn't answer.
Okay, please, yes.
So those are Asher Lasday, John William Rommel, Rachel Morrow, Frank Sotile, Stephen Sant Amour, and Joyce Yin. If any of them are here, could you please raise your digital hand and we'll promote you so that you could speak. Otherwise, that's the list.
Okay, I regret that we're not going to be able to expand into the people who have not signed up. I encourage everyone who has spoken and those who have not to send through the community board website portal written testimony of whatever sort you would like, be it documents or your own writings. I believe there are no more, right? No one's replied to you, right, Michael?
I see no hands.
Okay, then we'll end the public testimony. Board members who are present who would like to speak. Michael, if you could recognize them along, whoever they are.
Do that, Chenault. And I would like to go first, actually, and ask the applicant. Well, first of all, I would just like to make a comment which regards, the concept of intent versus impact. And, certainly our questions about the structural aspect of this, you can, of course, understand are paramount. We certainly would never think that anybody goes into a situation like this with any intention to do harm. But regardless of intention, the potential impact here is clearly of considerable concern, not just to you and to the committee, but to the public. And I have a question for you about some of the points that Michael Hiller made regarding the chimney, regarding snow, regarding soil compression, and regarding settlement. And I'm wondering if you could speak to those things.
Absolutely. And Jackie, feel free to jump in as well. Regarding Mr. Hiller's comments, there were a few that are worth addressing in addition to what you specified there. I think first that the city council rejected the project. That was quite a different situation in that that was a request for like a variance and additional square footage. So it's an altogether separate matter. Obviously, the conversation here, what we're presenting is the appropriateness from a landmarks perspective, not area transfers, because what we're proposing is as of right. Regarding comments about non-compliance with chimney locations, that's factually incorrect as well. That the windows, as mentioned during the presentation, are non-operable windows. And he was correct in asserting that the previous iterations that had been proposed and brought before landmarks did indeed engineer for the exhaust to travel through our building. He is right to point out what is the legal structure of that. Well, that has to be established in concert with the New York Parks Department, the landlord of the building. but that is certainly something that the MEP team on our project has taken under consideration and integrated into the proposed design. All of these projects require, cooperation of a lot of people and remain a work in progress. Some of the comments about why has this not been done? Well, the reality is first establishing an appropriateness argument that is accepted at landmarks. The building comes in with basically a little bit more than a conceptual, more of a schematic or design development level set of documents, which then are completed with the blessing of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. The lion's share of that coordination work happens in construction documents, which then are submitted for the certificate of appropriateness. So Mr. Hiller was correct that there was a status update letter issued, but not a certificate of appropriateness. It was correct that that was pending a plaster study that was completed. However, there was some conjecture in that he represented that our client knew that it would fail. That's patently false. He did not move forward because the viability of the project did not, quote unquote, pencil out, that it did not make financial sense to move forward with the repeated redesign and bench slab, all of the measures that were taken. There were iteration after iteration of design from a structural engineering perspective to reduce any inherent risk to construction. And at that point, the cost of those structural works outweighed any sort of cost benefit analysis to move forward with the project. So it's not about coming back repeatedly with bigger and bigger projects. It's a matter of what makes financial sense to move forward. That being said, the concerns pointed out by the Musa Rutledge, we work with that structural engineering firm. They are excellent. The concerns that they pointed out did resonate with us. We reviewed and we brought on a third-party structural engineer, a peer review to verify their claims and oversee all of the work that Carl and his team are doing. So you actually have the work of 3 independent structural engineers, which will establish a baseline, which is the most careful, the most the most comprehensive way to avoid any sort of damage to the building. So tonight I heard a lot of, it's a foregone conclusion that damage will happen to this building. I would not be involved in this project if it was a foregone conclusion. There are dozens and dozens of projects around the city. We've done a number of projects in the South Street Seaport, which have, I would say, even more perilous conditions given the fact they're built on landfill. And we've been able to execute those without damage to buildings.
Right.
So,
okay. Thank you. I mean, we
yeah.
understand that it's not,
Sure.
necessarily a foregone conclusion. And I would say more realistically are concerned with what is the likelihood of risk. I mean, it's not, a foregone conclusion, but it is a very real threat. And, look what happened at the New York Fire Museum, also a city-owned property, where there was impact from the Disney construction.
Yeah.
And that impact has had a devastating effect on the New York Fire Museum. There's no way that Disney went into this, the most risk-averse company imaginable, that there's no way they went into this without having done their due diligence. And yet the New York Fire Museum, has suffered $6 million worth of damages, and the city of New York has taken them to the state Supreme Court. So we have very real reasons to be worried about this. And, thank you for your answers to my questions about that. Who
May
else
I-
in the committee?
I'm sorry.
Jackie, yeah.
May I just respond a little bit? I want to second what Jordan just said. The truth is this type of work is approved in historic districts all the time. There are, as we pointed out in our presentation, there are a number of new buildings that were constructed in this particular historic district already since designation. There's a report by Village Preservation that was last updated in 2021 that shows that since designation of the Greenwich Village Historic District, the Landmarks Commission had approved 45 new buildings, and they have been built, and we have never heard about any catastrophic events coming out of those projects. There is sometimes sometimes there are catastrophes, but they are not the norm. It's not, when you have professionals working on these projects, the expectation shouldn't be that something's going to go wrong. The expectation should be that you trust professionals with degrees and training and decades of expertise to do the project correctly for you. And that's generally what happens in New York City, because we have a Department of Buildings and we have a Landmarks Preservation Commission that is overseeing this work.
We understand that that's not the norm. I think our concern is the things that happen that are outside the norm. And we have seen enough of them. Most recently within CB2 was 14 Fifth Avenue and that situation. We've seen others as well. So, we realize, of course, that it's not the norm. Our concern is not about the norm. Our concern is about the possibility of risk. Thank you.
Understood. I would like to also just note that the Landmarks Commission has already had its impartial consulting engineer review everything submitted by GMS, and they've already cleared us through their what they call their new enhanced engineering review. They've already cleared us through that stage of review for making us eligible for a public hearing. So there has been yet another engineer that's already reviewed everything. And I'm sure if he had any concerns about threats to stability or even too much vibration at the Merchants House Museum, he would have voiced that to us and to Landmark staff, and we would not be allowed to go forward with the public hearing process yet.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you. Brian, I see that your hand is up.
Yes, thank you very much. Certainly enjoyed all the presentations. And I think that even before I came on the Community Board 2 board, it was uniform that we are very vehemently behind protecting the Merchant House Museum. Those statements have been very consistent. And I've also had the honor of touring and studying the Merchant's House. And it's a wonderful landmark. So we do want to preserve that, and we don't want anything to happen to it. What strikes me in the whole evening of presentations is that no one is here from the city of New York that represents why, since 2012, what we hear testimony of different aspects of trying to save the Merchant House, that we don't hear of the efforts to simply purchase that lot and make use for the city that would benefit the Merchant House Museum. This may be off the topic, but it certainly has come up with a lot of comments. So after more than 10 years, more than 12 years, that we're still saying that the ideal solution is for the city to own that lot, relieve the developer of their expense of trying to make something work here. So it's a terrible situation for the community to be in, because there are the private property rights. And there's even the reinforcement of the recent code and zoning changes. It seems like the city is working against itself in that respect. And so I hope that we can find a way forward. It's very difficult. Thank you.
Susan, I'd like for all the others to speak before I speak.
All right,
you're talking,
Anita, Anita, Eugene. Anita, is that your hand? We can't hear you.
Anita, you're muted.
Unmute yourself, Anita.
I know.
There you go. Okay.
Oops. Sorry.
We can hear you.
All right. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button, but I don't want us to waste any time. I like what you said, Brian. It really is a solution, but of course, it's not one that we have under our control. For example, there's a museum on 20th Street, Louise Bourgeois' home was converted into a living museum. It was frozen in time, and the adjacent row house was connected internally, but is used for all the educational purposes, the offices, the visiting scholars. And that's the kind of condition that we could, benefit from here. Our job is very difficult because we do support the preservation of the old Merchant's House, without a doubt. My relationship goes back so far. My undergraduate thesis was on the old Merchant's House and all of the history that went into creating this piece of architecture. And over time, everyone brings their own perspective to it, and it's so important that we maintain that. On the other hand, we've been asked to review for the Landmarks Commission the aesthetic architectural integration of this building into a landmark district next to an individual landmark. So once we start commenting on that, we've sort of accepted the fact that the building exists. I will say a few things about the proposal, which I do think is one of the better one of the three that we've seen. I think it's a very good architect, and it has some nice features to it. It's an enormous building. This goes all the way back, 100 feet, I guess it is, and it's massive on the side of it. So if I were to comment on the design, I would just wish it were less imposing and sort of overwhelming of this little gem that we have, our little petite gem with a little beautiful garden that sort of captures the whole flavor of that 1830s, 50s lifestyle. So at that, I'll turn it over to someone else and wish we weren't in this predicament.
Thanks, Anita. Anybody else on the committee before we get to Chenault?
Yeah, Eugene hasn't spoken.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just also just add that, it's just an odd case of, I guess, deja vu that we're here again.
Sorry.
Discussing a development that's encroaching on the stability and the future ability for people to enjoy the Merchant House as it is. I guess maybe the one question I would have is, with the various, technological solutions to look for, changes in the tilt or any cracks and so on, what is the process in place once, that damage is detected? What is the remediation process from the developer? I mean, is the work immediately stopped? Is this monitored 24/7? Someone go and what actually happens there?
I can give you part of an answer if it's okay for me to speak again. Is that all right?
Go ahead, Jackie. Yeah.
Okay. So this has been brought up, but I don't think any of you have probably actually read the status update letter that was issued for the last approval for the second proposal for this previous proposal for this lot. So a status update letter is issued by Landmarks after the commissioners have voted to approve something at a hearing. It's not a permit, but what it does is document what the commissioners decided at a hearing, and it lists stipulations for what has to be given to Landmarks in order to issue the actual permit. So the status update letter from 2024 says, in voting to approve this proposal, the commission stipulated that prior to issuance of the permit, an extensive monitoring and remediation program must be devised for the adjacent Merchant House Museum in consultation with a plaster expert, including confirmation of the appropriate standard for vibration tolerance, a survey of the existing plaster conditions, a stabilization plan, and a remedial plan to address any physical damage at the merchant's house caused by the approved work, that LPC and interested parties will be notified in real time of any breach of the vibration threshold, and notice of any breach of the optical threshold monitoring within 12 hours, that based on consultation with LPC staff and the plaster expert and the plaster survey, the applicant shall put in place prior to the issuance of the permit a remedial fund or equivalent financial instrument to support plaster repairs at the Merchants House Museum for any physical damage caused by the approved work. So this is everything that the commission staff and commissioners decided in the last round, that these are what they would need to feel like construction could move forward with assurances and in a safe manner. So we have every reason to believe that they'd make the same stipulations again, and that ownership will, if and when this is approved, move forward and meet all of these requirements that are outlined by the Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, just to point out that that with holding money in escrow for any potential damages is an effort to eliminate, I think, the fear expressed by a number of people that spoke tonight about a developer just disappearing. That there's fully invested and is protecting the building to the best of their abilities with resources to address any issues should they come up. But it is our sincere hope that no issues come up.
Thank you. I mean, it is unfortunate that, when these triggers do get tripped, though, I mean, the damage has already occurred. But that's basically my question. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
Not necessarily. I think with the TPPN 1088 and the extensive monitoring program that Carl spoke about, there are tolerances that trigger prior to movement that would create damage. So it isn't just telling you that damage has happened. It's letting you know that specific tolerances with a cushion in there to be able to cease the work and prevent there from actually being damage.
All right, Chenault, I believe you had some questions.
Okay. This tolerance thing has gone round and round through both of the hearings for the prior building and now. And we've never gotten a clear picture quantitatively of there being a level of tolerance short of causing plaster damage that would foretell it. And we've also never gotten anything clear about what to do about it. If the construction crew and design feels that it's done the most gentle demolition and construction possible, and the monitor's triggered, and it's not yet fully dug, what do you do? That's more a rhetorical question than one to be answered. The other thing is to the size of the building. It seems that there was already objection to the size before, and now it's gotten bigger. And if I understood correctly, because the building that was on the way to approval, if you will, was not economically viable. One would question about why it was ever put forward if it's not economically viable. Nevertheless, now we've got a bigger building with all the problems, the height and the looming of the two sections, one over the house itself, and one that's perhaps even more critical is over the garden, so that it appears to just rise up flush with the back of the fence of the garden, when a fence suggests a definition between one space and another, and then after those spaces are satisfied, something else happens. If anything, we would have enjoyed seeing a proposition that was smaller than the prior one rather than larger. And because it's gotten so big in what is permitted, it almost looks puffy beyond its natural size. The lot line windows help some, but far from solving it. I have no further questions. I'll have a lot to say in the business meeting.
Okay. Nobody
Do
else?
we think we've satisfied Susan all the?
Yeah, I mean, Brian, Eugene, Anita, do you have any other questions? Nope. All right, we've got a few community board members here, and I'd like to know
let me speak first to the public. I regret that we didn't have time to hear from people who hadn't signed up, because I'm sure there were some interested in speaking. We would welcome anyone's written testimony, I'll just repeat, and send that through the community board website, and there's a place to be in touch. It's perfectly obvious. So could we hear from the board people, please, and Susan?
Yeah, are there Carter, Donna, Valerie, does anybody have any questions, or would anybody like to speak?
Or statements?
Right, doesn't look like it, so I think we can move into our business session.
I just wanted to
thank
everybody for all the really compelling testimony.
Oh, wait, Carter would like to speak. Yeah, hi, Carter.
Hi, I just wanted to thank everybody for all the great and compelling testimony, and I think that the committee is on the same track and same thoughts that I'm having, so I just wanted to support your guys' questions and your commentary as you go into business session. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. All right, Chenault.
Okay, we may have occasion that we would like to ask a question of people who are still here and not participating, but we'll come to that if we come to that. I would like to start much as we did the other night. Oh, Susan, you'll be is just a statement from each person going around the committee. In this case, for approval with considerations or not approval. So if you would just go one by one and say how you feel now, then we'll discuss fine points. Susan, you want to begin?
Sure, as much as I understand that the building next door that's to be demolished, is not owned by the Merchants House and is private, and that property is privately owned. And as much as, I understand the implications of all of that, the fact remains that things do happen, and the best laid plans do not guarantee the safety of the Merchants House. There is no way that they can. And we have seen far too many examples of well-intentioned construction projects where the risk has just been too high. The damage to the historic property has been too significant. And I'm only speaking personally now, but personally, I cannot approve construction of this scope on this property, whether it's as of right or not. I cannot. This Merchants House is too valuable as an historic artifact. Now, even more so now that we know the history regarding the Underground Railroad. valuable as an educational institution, as a cultural institution, as there was somebody, it's valuable on so many levels that I personally cannot see my way to approving this proposal that is in front of us with this enormous massing. I yield.
Next.
All right.
Brian?
Okay. Well, to continue, that as a historic preservation design professional with a lifetime of experiences with all kinds of buildings and conditions, I have studied these presentations very carefully and looking for the care that they have put into it. And without being able to really be at their seat when they're making the calculations and so forth, I believe that they have done everything they can to ensure the protection of the Merchant House Museum. But unfortunately, that doesn't mean that everything will go well and everything will be protected. And it is because of the lack of support from the city of New York to protect the house, and by simply buying the adjacent lot, that I cannot support this proposal. Thank you.
Eugene?
Thank you. Yeah, I would say that, you know, this kind of goes to the heart of what landmarks preservation is. I mean, we have such a treasure in our district, I mean, in the city with the Merchant House Museum. And you know, I do want to kind of applaud the applicants for not really going too much into the whole, you know, as of right or not as of right argument. I mean, I think it's, you know, they certainly have made it as large as possible in the current zoning, which is unfortunate. And it's absolutely massive, dwarfing, you know, that small 3.5 story building next to it. And I find it very difficult to approve this type of construction next to the Merchant House. I think that it was a very well done presentation. And I think that, again, you know, there was a lot of engineering thought going into preventing any damage from occurring, but, you know, there's always the possibility. And that possibility, however slight, is just too much.
Anita?
Yes, well said, everybody. In addition to responding to the proposal, I think it's also our responsibility to reflect what the community has told us here. And there may be supporters of the building. They didn't choose to come today, but I do know that the old Merchant's House has that effect on people. There's just a very deep love and protective element that comes out in all of us that says, well, just not here. Here, it's too fragile. And I think the description of the plaster lath, which again, there's all these areas in the museum that you can go and see how these things are constructed. The old wooden lath, when you see the plaster pushed through and it's keyed in, and none of that gets better with age. It gets weaker. And also the ceilings, you know, I was actually thinking, well, what about, you know, are we going to put washers into the ceiling so that it's not loosened up? And some of these things are really hard to see because they're behind walls. So I do think we have to deny it and say that maybe it's not a reflection of this applicant, but more a reflection of the sentiment. and the importance of the old Merchant's House is governing that decision.
Well said, Anita. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think none of us want to belittle the seriousness of effort that has gone into this, the nuance of certain aspects of the design, the very all the very serious engineering work. But at the same time, you know, it is what it is. Situation is what it is.
Thank you, everybody. Several things. The responsibility of the community board is to hear from the public, take that information, and put it together with our knowledge, expertise, and experience, and come up with resolutions. That's what we do throughout all the time, everywhere. Tonight, we've had not one syllable of support for this building from the public. And I would note that, which is unusual, I believe 2 people were of the community and they both had a connection to the Merchant's House. So 100% fulfill the requirement that we give more weight to of living in the district or having an interest in the district. The Underground Railroad would make I would say that if it was an ugly house, it would make it eligible for landmark status because the history is, have a look at the Stonewall Inn and one doesn't find a beautiful piece of architecture. Indeed, if it weren't the Stonewall Inn, there might well come a proposition to demolish it, and we may not object. So there's that added layer that if you will, it's double jeopardy. And there's been testimony that but we know where the chute is and the delicacy of everything and could actually see it. The structural damage and plaster is not a question of we'll put up a bond and fix it if it breaks. It's that these are things that are not replaceable. Facsimiles could be made, but what's there is not replaceable. And finally, I live in rooms in a house of about the same era, a little bit later, with original plaster. And I can speak about keys and particularly in ceilings, and we haven't had any major construction on either side. Is there any more discussion about it? The question is, it seems that we have 100% recommending denial. Do we want to, as we did last time, simply recommend the denial and so forth? Or do we want to do the part that we've done with other denial of the building, basically, is if it is approved, what we want to happen? I'd like to hear what people think about just that, which principle that we use we would apply.
Well, Chenault, if I can respond to your question, I would love that. I certainly hope that along with all the other language that we have used before, and it's going to be similar this time, that I just feel like if I don't believe that we have made the statement strongly enough to the city that they should be taking the bull by the horns on this one. They have the power to do something about it. And they've purchased the lot next to it to the east. They could do the same thing on the west. it's maybe important enough for eminent domain. I don't usually like to use that, but anyway, that would be my.
And that is, we'll work that into a statement as a recommendation through the Landmarks Commission somehow. We'll figure it's a difficult thing to say because we're not asking the Landmarks Commission to buy it, but it can be another deny and that, I think is how we're.
That's right. So Chenault, are you asking to now go through the usual list, starting with the front facade or the, I don't know, materials, windows, that sort of thing, like we did before?
Okay. Do you mean you're suggesting that we put in if a building is approved?
Well, yes, I'm just, seems to be that.
You mean for us to discuss or to put into the resolution?
Yeah, I just want to I'm just going to jump in and interrupt everybody just to clarify that I think the question here is which way to go with this resolution, just a straight up denial or that sort of more, that other way of thinking, which is the, even if one is not in favor, one says, well, if this thing that we don't want to happen happens, then this is what we'd like to see with it, this sort of seat at the table argument. And I think the question that Chenault is asking us is which way we would like to go here. The what I'm going to call the seat at the table argument or position, or the just flat out denial.
Well, what we did before was flat out and that it be redone and come to us.
I'm going to answer for what I think.
Substitute anything that came with this denied, we want to see it.
Sorry, repeat that, Chenault?
It was that if what we often ask on a smaller scale, that if it's denied and they submit anything in place of it, that we see the new.
Oh yeah.
No,
well, that makes
the new
sense.
hearing
Sure.
on whatever the replacement is.
Yeah. Yeah. But I personally don't feel inclined to say, well, great, if you give the massing a little haircut, then, we're good with it, or take that kind of approach. I don't think makes sense in this extraordinary circumstance.
You're saying not to have a seat at the table.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying.
I think Susan is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're saying you're supporting a flat out denial, right? Without going into the specifics of,
right,
if it were a different color or if the cornice was
exactly.
Because
what is your position, Eugene?
I support the flat out denial. I just think that it's so egregious that I don't know that it makes sense to go and talk about the cornice not being to our liking, or
it has more impact. It's more powerful to be a straight out denial. I think we could say, even though if the proposal was well done or whatever, I mean, I don't think that would take away from it. It actually might even empower it, because if it were a horrific design, it would only fuel it. But here, the principle is just that we are supporting the old Merchant's House, the community, and historic architecture.
Yeah, I support what you're saying. I support what you're saying, Anita, to do it that way.
We understand the application well. It's that we don't think it satisfied this overriding concern of preserving the house.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's it.
It's an extraordinary situation.
And as I said, I think in an earlier question or something, maybe it was earlier, sometime I said earlier, how do you know how much is not what you know? is there what is the risk in taking down the building that's there, for example, before you even get into this construction phase?
Mm.
And there is a degree of risk. If I could have just a moment, I'm looking for the prior oh, I've ruined the timestamp on it.
Say that the testimony
I don't
was
have that, but I've
corroborating-
circulated it, and I'll use it as a model because we're saying this exactly the same thing we said before, which is it's a no-go as far as we're concerned. And we'll work in, Brian, that the wisdom of the purchase of the lot.
Yes,
And-
I double that. I think that's really the only good solution. I mean, it's not fair to the owner of the adjacent property. They want to maximize their profit. It's America. We're used to this. New York City, nothing stays the same. But in this case, it's extraordinary circumstances, and the city should protect it by not approving construction.
And from our conversation now, redesigning the building, making it shorter,
It doesn't matter.
and all
No.
that is not going to satisfy our root reason for not being confident that it can go forward,
Yeah, exactly.
apart from any aesthetic consideration for the house. And so I've circulated the prior resolution, so you all have it in an email that describes it. So, and we'll very much use that. There are a lot of clauses there that are exactly the same about just the statements about the house itself and about the juxtapositioning of the two things that we're asked to decide. Note that tomorrow night we have a fair number of conversions of row houses. I'm convinced I'm going to get the top price because I'm going to have the only row house left that hasn't been converted. So we'll keep going until that happens. And we'll have an adjunct at the end. If you're still here, Dana, I may have forgotten to reply about that we'll discuss the police building at the end of the.
Yes. And if I may briefly.
Okay. And be sure to tell, I think I just didn't answer that in an earlier email from Andrew this morning.
Yes. Would you want Andrew or myself to speak at all during that, or do you have?
We always welcome you when you will and can speak. I think it's particularly appropriate since what's before us is to support something from village preservation.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And we know he's on tomorrow night in any case.
I have a question.
Okay.
Did we discuss the other applicant tonight, 52
Oh, it was so long ago. It's in the last meeting.
We need to circle back on that one.
Yes. We certainly want to caution about the removal care.
Yeah.
You're talking about, why? What does that have to do with anything? Are you talking about the Gansevoort?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
The Bottega.
Bottega Veneta.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess a removal, but it's not really that important. I think they're not going to be changing the sign. Then they have to come back to us. But you mean that it won't? Maybe it's a ghost sign then. Anyway, it doesn't concern me as much. I thought it was.
Approve it, provided that the plan is in place, which the applicant represented was in place.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. Okay.
It's sort of a positive a positive, yeah, provided, as opposed to deny accept, which is the next step.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah, no,
really
I
nice.
yeah, I
I
agree.
liked it.
It,
Agreed.
it comes as a strong suggestion, in fact. Okay, thank you all. We'll continue the marathon tomorrow at 5:30.
Thank
All
you
right.
all.
And
Maybe we can all have some
Thank
dinner
you.
before.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Good
you
night,
very much.
Thank you so
everybody.
much, guys.
Thank you very
I
much.
applaud your stamina this week.
Anita and I are battling away over the first meeting's resolution for you just to check our grammar and spelling. So
All right.
I'll send that.
All
to you.
right.
Thanks, everybody.
It's long, but
Bye.
it will.
Everybody, thank you.
Good night.
Okay. Thank you all and good night.
I-
Thank